standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, we saw you on television. I say, oh yes, on what? On GB News.
Hello, are you the famous Sue? The whole crew hit me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here, right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Hello, good morning, hope you're well. Live from Washington DC, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward.
Well, breaking tonight, a brand new survey on community cohesion all across the country wants Brits to say what unites us, what brings us together. And this, of course, comes in the wake of the Unite the Kingdom march yesterday. Well, I reckon it's not Sir Keir Starmer or the Labour Party doing any uniting thus far, but it comes after there were 43 arrests at that Unite the Kingdom march and pro-Palestine Nakba marchers this weekend.
Britain's future lies with Europe and one day, back in the European Union.
Oh dear, what's he done? Wes Streeting threw his hat into the ring to be our next PM. In the same breath, he said we should rejoin the European Union. Joining me to react to that is Douglas Carswell, one of the architects of Brexit and the country's first UKIP MP.
Here's an insane stat for you. 1 in every 25 people wandering around in Britain arrived in the last 5 years.
Elsewhere tonight, pretty controversial incident. That post by Reform's Zia Youssef has been banned from TikTok, and he blames the draconian Online Safety Act, and he says Labour is anti-free speech. Never. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Hello, good morning. I hope you've had a good Sunday. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me in Washington this evening is my panel, award-winning former journalist and founder of Media Advisory Experts, Mark Albert. And alongside Mark is the Daily Mail US political reporter, Victoria Churchill. And in London, comedian and GB News superstar, Paul Cox. Hello, Paul. Thank you for your company once again on The Late Show Live. Right, let's move on to our main news this evening. After 43 arrests at the United Kingdom March and pro-Palestine Nakba marchers yesterday, the public is now being asked to contribute to a national survey on what unites the nation. What brings us together? What are our shared values? I know we hear about British values and so on. I don't think British values exist, but this survey on community cohesion is being led by former Home Secretary Sir Sajid Javid, who tonight warns Britain risks being torn apart by our differences. He said the UK was in real peril and more common ground must be found across communities, as he encouraged people to contribute to the national conversation. That's what it's called, the national conversation. Let me know your thoughts on this. gbnews.com/your say. What does bring us together? What do we have in common across the United Kingdom? And what do we share in common values for the future? With me now is social policy analyst Rakib Ashan, and soon to be joining us is Liberal Democrat councillor Matthew Holbert. Good evening, Rakib. I'll start with you because you're the only person here at the moment. What brings us together, and why is... Oh, sorry, it's just Matthew. Matthew Holbert, hello. Matthew, what does bring us together in the United Kingdom? There's this new survey on community cohesion. It comes in the wake of what we saw yesterday. So instead of talking about what divides us, what we can moan about and what we can attack each other for, what does bring this country together?
Well, it's interesting, Ben, and it's great to be with you again this morning. Thank you. I mean, I think that we should be united by the fact that we don't all have to be the same. And I am going to use that phrase, which I know that you and others don't like, but which I think is absolutely true, and that is that our diversity is our strength. And I hate the idea that seems to be promulgated by some, including, I have to say, you know, on this channel, that we all have to conform, that we all have to be the same, that we all have to look and sound the same. I don't think that's Britain at all. You know, I've said to you before, I'm born of the city of Leicester, the first minority-majority city, and I'm really proud of that city. It's not perfect, it has its problems like everywhere else, but actually people by and large from very different backgrounds get along and enjoy the same space, the same community. So I actually think it's our diversity that unites us.
OK, well, I didn't want to go down this route, Matthew, but you're the one who's just brought it up. So I don't see any value in going to a place like Leicester, where I visited last year, and I did a piece on an area, a street, I think it was Mornington Street, which is the street in the UK which speaks the least amount of English. Hardly anybody in that street speaks a word of English. I knocked on doors. The occupants of houses and flats there had to have the conversation with me translated by their children. I mean, what strength and benefit does that bring to the UK, where you have people who can't speak the language, as one example?
And your problem with that is what? Is what I'd say rhetorically in return. I mean, were these people...
You don't think there's an issue with not being able to speak a word of English in Great Britain? You said diversity is our strength and unites us. How does that unite us, not being able to speak English? I can't speak to anybody.
Well, what I'm saying in return to you is, were these people perfectly peaceful? Were they going about their lives? And if they were, what is your problem?
Well, because of course they're peaceful, of course they're going about their lives, but we're talking about what unites us. And if I can't even have a conversation with somebody down a street because they don't speak the language and they come from a different culture, we have nothing in common. What do we have in common, Matthew, with somebody from Bangladesh who can't speak a word of English, who's been in the country 20 years? That's a real-world example, by the way, in Leicester.
But Ben, sorry, why I started calling you Chris there. But Ben had a brain fog moment there for a moment. Ben, I think there's some hypocrisy here, right? Because I've got relatives who live my sister and brother-in-law, indeed, in the Middle East and have done for decades. Do they speak a word of Arabic? No, they don't. Oh, but there's apparently no problem with that because they're English abroad, and so that's not an issue. But it's when people come here who perhaps don't look like us or sound like us, then we have an issue. Is that right?
Okay, so it's about skin. Okay, yeah, we're all racist, and it's about skin colour. Rakib, what's your take on this? What does unite us?
Well, I think that, Ben, there's no doubt in my mind that the country's experienced astonishing levels, remarkable levels of demographic change in recent times. We've experienced unprecedented levels of immigration. I think that on top of the remarkably high levels of legal migration that we've experienced in recent times, we have the ongoing small boats emergency. And I think that there's many people across the country who feel insecure over the ongoing situation. There are those cultural anxieties over the pace of social change in their own local communities and the country at large. And I think that there'll be elements of the Unite the Kingdom rally, you might call them far-right ethno-nationalists, but I think it would be entirely wrong to caricature the entire movement or every single protester in that way. I think that we have those legitimate concerns over admittedly sensitive matters of immigration, integration, identity, and those concerns have been ignored for far too long by the political establishment.
But Rakib, so off the back of what we saw yesterday, this new survey is asking Brits what unites us. Matthew thinks diversity and multiculturalism unites us. I mean, with respect to you, Matthew, I think it's a bit of a lazy answer, so I'll ask Rakib, what unites us in Britain?
Well, I think the problem is, at the moment, in my view, I think that many of us would actually agree that we're a fairly divided society. And I think that in a way we are a diverse society, ethnically, racially and religiously. But in my view, I think that we haven't talked very much, especially our sort of political leadership in the country. We haven't talked very much about what unites us. I think what we've tried to do is celebrate difference, celebrate diversity, but there hasn't been enough of a discussion on commonality. That emphasis has not really been there. And I think under our state-sponsored model of multiculturalism, I think in some ways that has been quite divisive because we've ultimately emphasized particular religious, racial and ethnic identities. And I think that talk about shared values, a sense of common purpose, mutual obligations, that's been lost. And I think that in a way that's ultimately divided our society. And I think that has harmed social cohesion over time.
Yeah. Matthew, I will say to you, your example as well about your relative or your friend who lives in the Middle East, that's fine, they don't speak the language, but I go to the UAE or the Middle East and you do not find pretty much entire cities of white English people not speaking the language, enclaves of white Brits not speaking the language. Yeah, you've got expats who are working and fine, so on. But you've got Leicester, you've got Bradford, you've got a multitude of cities in the UK where this is the reality, where they don't integrate, many don't speak the language. It's just not comparable to say, yeah, but we've got some people on the Costa del Sol in Spain who don't speak Spanish apart from Cerveza, por favor. It's just not comparable.
Well, of course we should encourage people to learn the language. It would be better for them. It would enable them to access services, etc. better. I'm certainly not going to deny that. But I just worry, as a Liberal, that by commonality, what you really mean is conformity. And I'm against conformity. I think, everyone is different. Every human being is different. Let's be honest, the reason you have me on here, and I'm very grateful that you do, is because I have a different point of view to perhaps the mainstream on this channel. And that is diversity. So I just don't see what your problem is with it.
Yeah. Let's ask Paul Cox. Paul Cox in London, what's your problem with it? Why are you such a bigot, Paul?
No, I didn't say that. Paul's a good friend.
that Matthew has never called me a bigot. That's true. I can confirm that. We definitely have differing views on this. I probably am much more aligned with a monoculture than a multiculture, which is actually interesting. Not something that Matthew has said tonight. He hasn't mentioned multiculturalism at all. He's talked about diversity, and I think the problem comes through the cultural differences. When you have a mishmash of like this whole idea that you can just chuck people with different ideas all into one place and help them get along as a community, for me, is a nonsense. I prefer us to be closer to a monoculture where you can come from diverse backgrounds, but we're all working as a community towards one ideal or one way of thinking or one way of living. I don't think that's bland or anything of that nature. So I grew up in Portsmouth. I watched Portsmouth and the area I grew up in just outside of Portsmouth change completely. It was, despite Portsmouth being a naval city and a place where many people around the world would come and go, it pretty much retained a culture for most of my upbringing. And I was born in the very late 70s, in 1979, and I would say there wasn't much difference right up until the mid-2000s. It was pretty much a white city, particularly, I said on the previous show, I went to school and this is not a brag, but the point is that there was no multiculturalism at my school, very little multiculturalism at all. And actually, ironically, when I got an education and wanted to go and work somewhere, I deliberately came to London because I virtually knew everybody in the area I lived in. So there is an essence to diversity which I understand, but the critical mass has turned now, right? That the equilibrium's gone. We need to have a balance. There needs to be a monoculture so that people understand, a bit like a constitution in the US, probably not an ideal benchmark to measure against, but they're all aiming towards one purpose. We haven't got that now. People will come here, make changes, and expect us to adapt, and I just don't believe in that at all.
Paul, my friend, what do you mean by make changes? Because I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you see, and the reason why I just don't have the problem with it that you guys do is that I think if people are peacefully, it's different if people aren't peaceful and if they're, you know, doing criminal activity or anything like that. Of course, that's a difference. But if people are living peacefully, right? Why do we have to have
we're going down a bit of a sort of rabbit hole here. It's kind of a separate conversation. It's in response to your answer, which is what unites us, and you say diversity. Again, I'll say I think it's a bit of a lazy answer. Paul, what does unite us in Britain? If not diversity, I don't consider diversity as something that unites us. So what does unite us? And let's move to the positive instead of the negative. What unites Britain? Because this survey from Sajid Javid is asking the country what unites us. He says the UK is in real peril.
And I believe it is, and there is a diminishing returns on what unites us. Unfortunately, Ben, I think we've had this discussion, and you just said at the beginning of this, you know, you're not sure if there is a British culture, and one of the reasons you're not sure if there is a British culture is because it's been diminished so much. The idea, you know, the idyllic idea of the Englishman or the British culture, for me, still remains there. It's still there. There's still an essence of it, and it's about.
I think there is British culture. It's British values I don't like. What does that mean,
well,
British values? People just band it around like it's confetti.
No. It's something that was invented by Gordon Brown in about 2005, something of that nature, 2003, I think. British values was a way of trying to funnel everybody in to a certain way of thinking. That's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm talking about is inherent British culture, which anybody can learn if they want to, and that's where the integration comes from, but they're simply not. And one of the reasons they're not is nearly every authority in our country doesn't value British culture. We'll go against the incumbent in order to win votes. You've only got to look at the... Why is that?
I've still not heard what it is. What is it? Tell me what it is.
Say that again, Matthew. You're shouting at me. I'm feeling terrified.
Never shout at you. Never shout at you, Paul. You still haven't, in the answer, my friend, told us what you think British culture is. Tell us what it is.
Okay, I think it's fair play. I think a great way of a great way of looking at this is pub culture. Genuinely, and I don't mean getting lapped up and watching the football. I mean the way that a community can come together in one place and have shared values is part of British culture. And what's disappearing now? Pubs. And that is...
But Paul, I'll say again, I'm sorry, Paul, I'm sorry to go at you, but that doesn't necessarily unite the nation, because vast swathes of the nation don't drink, they don't go to pubs. Muslims, what's the Muslim population? 5-6%, they don't go to pubs and get on the Raz. Rakib, what unites us? Nobody's been able to answer this so far, and actually it's a pretty grave example of where we find ourselves as a nation. What unites us? And I don't want to hear diversity.
Well, I think just as showing an appreciation of British history, culture and traditions. And I think that would be something that could be quite inclusive and bring people from a variety of backgrounds together. I think that for all its flaws, I'll always believe that Britain has given the world more good than harm. In my view, and I think that should be reflected in our education system. I think that should be reflected in our history lessons, and I think also that should be promoted by our public institutions. I think that with pub cultures, I think one of the reasons why the pubs are dying in many parts of the country is because of the predatory pricing of alcohol from major supermarkets. I think that's been a huge problem for pub culture. I don't think you can necessarily blame demographic change. I think there's also been some economic changes as well, which have been responsible for that. But I think for me, the difficulty that we're having at the moment, I think we have to look at the local elections as well, where you saw many parts of the country, you see this surge of what I'd call sort of right-wing national populism in the shape of Reform UK, and then you see this sort of rising emergent Islamopopulism, this pro-Gaza Islamopopulism. So I don't think that we can say anymore that we're this sort of perfect, this sort of paragon of social cohesion when you're seeing these almost competing forms of populism, Ben, which are taking root in many parts of the country.
And is that what Sajid Javid means then by saying we're in real peril?
I think so, because I think that in a way it's very difficult to reconcile. We have this sort of traditional British nationalism, and I think within that nationalism there is concerns over the very presence of Islam in the UK, and I say that as a British Muslim social conservative. I think that many people feel that there's a sort of growing assertive Islam which is taking root in the country. But then you have the sort of Islamic social conservatives. They feel that in some ways the country's become too secular. They feel that it's become too liberal, and they want to assert a certain version of Islam which counters against that. So I think it's very, as you can see, Ben, it's very difficult to reconcile that. So I think that at least we're talking about the fact that social cohesion, it's not all is well in the country, and I think at least this report is at the very least at least acknowledging that. Now, in terms of how it can be fixed, that's much easier said than done, because it's very difficult to reconcile those things.
Yeah, indeed. A few comments here on your say. Janet has said, Ben, in my opinion, a shared culture is what unites us. I think it's family, community, country. Somebody else said, British culture, it's not a museum piece to be dissected. It's the freedom to live as you choose, vote in a democracy and speak your mind. Freedoms we all exercise. Matthew, last word to you, then we'll knock this on the head.
Well, I agree with a little bit of what was just said by one of your commenters there. Freedom to live as you choose within the law. That's what I would say should unite us, and that is not conformity. And can I just say, perhaps finally, that I condemn both of the marches yesterday. I think they were both about intimidation. And so, you know, whilst I'm in favour of protest, and I've been on here before in defence of protest, I think that both of those yesterday were not shining examples.
Did you go down to the United Kingdom March, Matthew, yesterday? Did you go down there?
Well, I was up here in Leicestershire, but even if I was down there in London, I don't think I'd have left my house. I think it was. I think both were intimidating.
Oh, Matthew, come off it. Matthew, there were Muslims there, there were black people there were Asians, there were white people, there were Christians, there was all sorts of people. There was teachers, there were children there. I don't know how you can say something like that without even having had the decency to go down and have a look for yourself.
Well, I saw a lot of the coverage, and I certainly felt that I was very pleased not to be in London yesterday. I was very pleased to be up here in Leicestershire, because I thought it looked very intimidatory to me. And if you're telling me that no one who was part, and as I say, I condemn both. But if you're telling me that no one that was part of the Unite the Kingdom rally wasn't seeking to intimidate, then I think you're very naive, and I know that you're not naive, Ben.
Ben, can I just add a very quick point?
Yeah,
just a very quick point. I think with the protest, there'll be unsavoury elements in both demonstrations, but I think in some ways many people have caricatured the United Kingdom rally, as a sort of far-right protest, which I think is incorrect. And I also think that many people have caricatured many pro-Palestine demonstrations, sort of anti-Semitic hate marches. Now, of course, there's anti-Semitic elements, but I think it'd be unfair to suggest that every single person at these pro-Palestine rallies are an anti-Semitic extremist. So I think we need to get away from the caricatures and actually not just perfectly some concerns within both types of demonstrations.
Okay. Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate the hearty debate. Rakib, Matthew, Paul, thank you very much. Paul, stay around. We'll catch up with you very shortly. gbnews.com/Your Say. Lots of comments on those. I'll get to them after the break, but still ahead for now on The Late Show Live. Can't even talk. Well, that was Wes Streeting there, talking without sound. Maybe better for everybody, actually. He's thrown his hat into the ring to be our next Prime Minister, and in the same breath said we should rejoin the European Union. I told you this would happen. Joining me next to react to that is Douglas Carswell, one of the architects of Brexit, one of the Brexit OGs, and indeed the country's first UKIP MP. Back in a sec on The Late Show Live.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, welcome back to the Late Show Live. Labour leadership hopeful Wes Streeting has been criticised for reopening the Brexit wars after he called for Britain to, yes, rejoin the European Union. He called Brexit a catastrophic mistake in an intervention labelled quite odd by his Labour colleague, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy.
The biggest economic opportunity we have is on our doorstep. we need a new special relationship with the EU, because Britain's future lies with Europe and one day, back in the European Union.
OK, when it comes as Andy Burnham prepares his campaign to win a by-election in Makerfield, a seat which voted to leave by around 65% in 2016. One man doing the rounds back then in the UK was former UKIP MP Douglas Carswell, who joins me now, I guess, from Mississippi. Douglas, where you've taken refuge from Blighty. What do you make of Wes Streeting's declaration that he wants to rejoin the EU? I guess we've known it for all these years, that that's what they plan to do, but now they're out in the open.
It is indeed deeply, deeply odd. We have 10 years after the referendum got leading Labour figures wanting to rerun the referendum, in effect telling people that they were wrong to vote to leave and that they need to think again. I think the really interesting thing here is that we've got a leadership contest taking place within the Labour Party. In order to try to win the crown and become the next Labour leader, the contenders are going to say things that appeal to their own lunatic left-wing backbenchers, but are a turn-off to the voters that they need in order to be an effective party again. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing a contender here pitching himself as being a Remainer in order to try to get the support of his backbenchers. But I think that's going to make the job of the next Labour leader a lot harder, because why would people vote for someone who wants to basically tell them that they were wrong to vote leave 10 years ago?
Yeah, they haven't seemed to have learnt their lesson either. I mean, they got walloped at Brexit, they got walloped in 2019, they got walloped at the locals last week. Just tell me, Douglas, you were, as I keep describing you, an architect of Brexit, UKIP's first MEP back in the day. What's changed since then amongst the electorate? Has that feeling of betrayal by the establishment, that feeling of discontentment and anger, has anything changed, or is it sort of more febrile than ever before?
I think clearly 10 years on, people quite rightly think that Brexit's been bungled. It clearly has. We've not taken advantage of the opportunities. But I don't think that means that people think that the solution is to go back in and tie ourselves to Europe. I mean, the one part of the world that has performed even worse than Britain has over the past 10 years is France and Germany and Europe. So clearly, Britain has problems, but our problems aren't going to be solved by rejoining the European Union. The European Union is, as I said, the one part of the global economy doing worse than Britain. The idea, as Wes Streeting said in his speech there, where he was reading from a script, the idea that we need to join the European Union, the economic data just doesn't support that. It's the world's only declining trade bloc. That doesn't mean, however, that Brexit has been a success. But I don't think public opinion has significantly changed. If you were to look at some of the recent polling and to ask people if they wanted to rejoin the European Union, if you were then to explain to people that they would need to say yes to the euro, they would need to say yes to Schengen, they would need to say yes to even more porous borders, support, I think, would whittle away very, very quickly.
Well, the quite sort of ghoulish analysis now of Brexit voters and the vote itself is that, most people who voted Brexit back then has either died or is on their way out, and that's what the sort of cretins, particularly of the left, say. Is that the case? What would happen now if there was a second vote?
Let's put this to the test. In microcosm, it looks like we're about to have a by-election in Makerfield. We have a leading Labour contender for the leadership, Mr. Andy Burnham, claiming that he wants to be the Labour candidate there. He pronounced that he was going to be the Labour candidate there before then suddenly realising that actually by a majority of 2-1, the good people of Makerfield had voted to leave the European Union. Let's see what happens in Makerfield. If Andy Burnham wants to come out as the rejoin candidate, which he clearly is, let him see if he can get elected in his own backyard. I suspect that actually he's setting himself up for a bit of a banana skin moment. But let's treat Makerfield as a test run for this. Let's let him come out, outline his views on why we should rejoin the European Union, and let's see if he gets into the House of Commons.
And just finally, Douglas, is this sort of cozying back up to the EU, the intention to rejoin the EU, is it an admission from some Labour types that their sort of mantra of growth, 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 that's all we heard during the campaign trail in 24, that was what they sort of laid their ambitions on. It was their number one sort of manifesto pledge, growth for Britain. Is this now an admission that they've utterly failed on that front? And by the way, just tell us about the growth situation in Mississippi, the GDP per capita, which now exceeds that of the UK.
Well, Mississippi's per capita GDP has now overtaken that of the UK. That means output per person is now higher in Mississippi than it is in Britain. And what's even more significant, last year, Mississippi's economic per capita GDP overtook that of Germany. So the poorest state in America now has a higher per capita GDP than Germany and Britain. The fact that you have politicians advocating that the way for us to grow as Britain is to submit to directives and rulemaking from Brussels doesn't tell us that we need more Europe. It tells us that the kind of people who now run Britain are simply not up to the job of running a country. In fact, they probably couldn't even run a whelk stall. They're only capable of following process and procedure. We've got a proceduralist prime minister. We've got a party in government that has absolutely no clue what to do with the levers of power. I think the fact that they are advocating that we should rejoin the European Union tells us not that we need to change our relations with Europe. It means that we need to change not just the party of government, we need to change the way Britain is governed. We need a wholesale restoration revolution in Britain. All of the changes that should have happened after we voted for Brexit, that didn't happen, now need to be implemented. We need to fundamentally change and transform the way in which Britain is run. Because, frankly, 40 years of EU membership mean that the way in which our country was run atrophied. We created a sclerotic system of government. We should have changed it. Boris Johnson should have risen to the occasion. That hasn't happened. We now need a full-blown restoration revolution to take full advantage of all the things we should have taken advantage of when we voted to leave the EU 10 years ago.
All right, Douglas. Great stuff. I'll have to get myself down to Mississippi soon, and you can show me how they've transformed the state. GDP per capita higher now than the UK.
Yeah, and we've just voted to abolish income tax. It's a wonderful place to live.
Ah, I'm going to get myself down there, get myself a home down there. Can I commute Mississippi to DC? We'll see. Douglas, thanks very much.
Come and make a programme about it. We'd love to. We'd love to. Thank you.
I'll be there. Thank you, Douglas. Richie has said on your say, streeting would be worse than Starmer. Regarding Brexit, any attempt to rejoin would need to go to a public referendum first. As Douglas said, that by-election could be a good litmus test of whether Brexit is still an appetite for the great British public. Right, still ahead on The Late Show Live tonight.
Here's an insane stat for you. 1 in every 25 people wandering around in Britain arrived in the last 5 years.
Right, somebody tell me what's wrong with that post there from Reform's Zia Youssef, because it's just been banned from TikTok, and he blames the Online Safety Act, a draconian piece of legislation, ironically brought in by his now Reform colleague Nadine Dorries when she was a Tory. He says Labour is anti-free speech, and they've used the Online Safety Act, which should be protecting children, to go after political opponents. Is he right? We'll be discussing that next.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you. Bulletins on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, Labour have been accused of silencing their political opponents after a Reform UK TikTok video was taken down because of the, according to TikTok, the Online Safety Act. So Reform's Zia Youssef, the party's Home Affairs spokesman, posted screenshots of a message he received on his own clip about immigration, saying TikTok had removed it, quote, in response to a report under the UK's Online Safety Act. This is the clip in question. Take a look.
Here's an insane stat for you. 1 in every 25 people wandering around in Britain arrived in the last 5 years. I'm Zia Youssef, Reform UK Shadow Home Secretary. Britain has been overwhelmed by immigration, both legal and illegal. More people have turned up on our beaches uninvited over the last 7 years than stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. And when they arrive illegally, they get free accommodation, free healthcare, free taxis, free leisure activities costing billions of pounds a year, all funded by you, the British taxpayer. And that's just illegal migration. Since David Cameron was elected Prime Minister, immigration has added the equivalent of the populations of Edinburgh, Leeds, Sheffield, Nottingham, Stoke, Bristol and Cardiff put together.
So, well, what part of that video do you think, viewers and listeners, breaches the Online Safety Act, which, according to the government website, says it's a new set of laws that protects children and adults online? Let's ask free speech lawyer Preston Byrne. Preston, good morning. Thanks for joining The Late Show Live. What's going on here? If indeed Zia Youssef is right and it's been taken down because of the Online Safety Act, what the hell is going on?
Well, what's happening is that the UK has insane speech laws. If you wrote that statement down on a sign and you hung it out the window of your house, you could probably get arrested for that. In Scotland, you certainly would. In England, you might. People are getting arrested for hanging up the cross of St. George on hate crimes grounds in the United Kingdom right now. So what's happened is the UK has some insane speech laws. The Online Safety Act basically transfers those insane speech laws into the digital world. And your Global Censorship Bureau, Ofcom, is sending demands to hundreds of companies. 197 American companies in the last year alone have gotten these notices from Ofcom, telling them that if they don't censor their websites to remove content that might be unlawful in England, they're going to get fined up to 6% of their global revenues, or $25 million, whichever is greater. So what's happened is you've got a huge online censorship regime. You've got a crazy domestic censorship regime, which is run wildly out of control because you don't have any constitutional protections for speech. And those two things taken together mean that Zia Youssef's statement, because some algorithm determines, yes, this could possibly be unlawful under British law, it's going to get taken down online.
I just wonder, though, is it the algorithm just predetermining potential breaches of the Act, or does somebody have to alert TikTok to a breach of the Act? Because that's what Zia Yusuf is suggesting. He's suggesting, as far as I can see tonight, that somebody has proactively gone to TikTok and said, hang on a minute, this video breaches the Online Safety Act, please take it down.
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't know the answer at the moment. That remains to be seen. But there are certainly organizations in the United Kingdom that are running around grassing on American tech companies. The Good Law Project sent a bunch of tasteless memes to Ofcom, and Ofcom last week reported that they had entered into a settlement with X in order to remove so-called illegal content, which is perfectly lawful in the United States where it's hosted, but is unlawful in the UK under some arguments, depending on who gets offended by it the most. And it's entirely possible that that happened in this case. Ofcom works with NGOs. It has priority reporters who are NGOs who can make something called a super complaint to Ofcom. It has extensive connections to the NGO community, pro-censorship NGOs that are very politically biased. So from that point of view, yes, it's entirely plausible that a private organization reported this content. It's also possible that it was algorithmically selected as part of Ofcom's ongoing compliance procedures, because again, there are obligations to remove illegal content both proactively and following notice under the Online Safety Act. And if you violate those rules, then Ofcom will send you a giant fine. So, we don't know where it's come from at this point. I presume that, there could be some legal process which you could commence, which would determine that. But at the moment, it's likely just an internal process over at TikTok.
Okay, interesting. Robert Jenrick has commented, well, they've all commented, Reform UK, Nigel Farage, Robert Jenrick, lots of them as well. Just trying to find Jenrick's tweet on it. He said, TikTok hosts thousands of videos from people smugglers boasting about breaking into the UK, talking about illegal migration, but they take down videos from Reform demanding action. Shameful censorship by them at Labour's behest. The irony of this is, and by the way, we haven't been able to get a comment from the government tonight, so they may come out tomorrow. Maybe we can bring the updated comment and say we've nothing to do with this. Maybe, as you suggested, Preston, it was the algorithm. But the irony of this is that Nadine Dorries, maybe you won't know her, but she was a former Tory MP, indeed a minister. She's now in Reform, which for many Reform voters blew their minds, because one minute she was the architect of the Online Safety Act, and then the next moment she's joining Reform talking about how draconian the Online Safety Act is. So, I mean, that's just, the irony is an understatement.
Yeah, the Online Safety Act's pretty stupid, and I don't think it has much of a future. I think the United States is well on its way, either at the state level or the federal level, towards preventing the Online Safety Act from reaching into the U.S. and harming American companies. So because most of the world's social media and tech industry is based in the United States, I don't think it has a very long shelf life left ahead of it. That's just my personal view. In terms of Reform, it's not like they're the government in waiting or anything and just had an absolutely blowout result in the local elections, right? What Reform should be doing is looking at this, and yes, you can complain about what Labour is going to do, but also they are presumably going to win the next election if the current trends keep up. And there are policy objectives and policies that they can promote and they can adopt as a party, which would prevent this from happening ever again. They could, change the speech laws in the United Kingdom. They could repeal the OSA. They could replace it with a new regime. So I think from Reform's point of view, it's all well and good to see that they're unhappy with it. That's a good start. But what we really need to be seeing from Reform, Jenrick, Farage, Zia Yusuf, and others, are some concrete proposals for what comes next. Your previous segment was with Douglas Carswell talking about Brexit, and you can increase the country's competitiveness by creating a better regulatory environment for tech, and I think that's not a bad idea.
All right, President, and this last question is pertinent to Ofcom, because I need to address any potential inaccuracies when they arise. You mentioned people had been arrested for raising the St George's Cross. Are you talking about raising flags, the St George's flag in the UK?
Yes, people
okay, there have been a few arrests for...
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a BBC story about this the other day. Someone was arrested for a public order offense for raising a St. George's Cross flag on a lamppost.
Got it. And you are quite right. There's 12,000 odd arrests a year for social media posts in the UK. Not all of them go to court and are charged, of course, but that is a fact. 12,000 posts for arrests, for social media posts, which is, it's mental. Preston, thank you so much. Appreciate you being on, and hopefully we'll catch up soon on The Late Show Live. Very quick comment from my panel here in DC, Victoria and Mark. Mark, when you hear stuff like this, it must be alien to Americans who are protected by free speech, the First Amendment.
Well, not exactly. This echoes something that happened in President Trump's first term when there was a midterm election 8 years ago, 2018. Fox, NBC, and Facebook said they would stop airing a Trump campaign ad. CNN outright banned it, and it was talking about someone who had been deported from the U.S. twice. He killed 2 police officers, sentenced to death. And the ad said that Democrats let him into that country. That was not accurate. The networks and all that took it down. So it's kind of an echoing to this situation where there's this ad and it was taken down as well.
But I guess the caveat is it wasn't the government, the states doing that. It was independent networks saying, in the interest of accuracy, we're going to do this.
But, you know, they all have lawyers, and perhaps it was the impact of the FCC or somebody that could have weighed in on that.
Okay, great. Victoria, very quick comment.
I mean, I think just as what your last guest was saying here is that policing social media companies, I don't think really works. And, you know, I think he is right in saying that this doesn't have a long shelf life because so many of these social media companies are based here in the US where we have this higher standard of free speech than I think anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, also right now you have things like Twitter community notes where people are making inaccurate statements. They're able, you know, people that think they do have the right information are able to contradict that right then and there.
Sure. Okay, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology has previously set out that the online safety laws do not ban any legal adult content. Instead, the laws protect children from viewing material that causes real harm in the offline world, devastating young lives and families. Under the Act, they say platforms should not arbitrarily block or remove content and instead must take a risk-based, proportionate approach to child safety duties. And it goes on and on. gbnews.com/your say. As soon as we get a comment from the government on this, or Labour tomorrow, I suspect it will come, we'll deliver that to you. So as for Zia Youssef, was it a direct intervention from the government? Was it the algorithm? We're yet to find out. Still ahead tonight on The Late Show Live.
We will stop this. We will smash the gangs.
I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders.
Is this a win for Labour? A new report shows arrests for offences linked to people smuggling have gone up by more than 55% in just a year. But will it stop the boats, dare I ask? This is The Late Show Live. Back in a sec.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you. Bulletins on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in, and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking in the last few moments, a new report shows National Crime Agency arrests for offences linked to people smuggling have gone up by more than 55% in just 1 year. So the NCA was involved in 300 arrests, both in the UK and overseas, in the year to April 2026. That's up from 190 the year before, according to new figures. Let's get the thoughts of Rob Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Rob, does this show Labour is winning the war against the people smugglers and eventually, hopefully, maybe in some years to come, stopping the boats?
No, the increase is up to a tiny number, and the most important fact is that convictions have gone down in the last year. It's funny the NCA press release doesn't include that because it kind of paints a somewhat different picture, and I think since 2018 we've seen a series of stories similar to this trying to assuage our concerns and convince us that action is actually happening. I think 200,000 migrants later, most people are probably thinking, yeah, and what good is this kind of stuff doing us? And as you point out, a lot of these arrests took place overseas. There's no indication that actually any of them or some of them were in any way linked to this channel crossing, and might actually be in a situation where we're policing Europe's borders with no actual benefit to Britain. I think, unfortunately, this is just yet another example that we do see, whether it be the NCA, whether it be the Home Office or any other government organisation, trying to sell us a pulp, paint a rosy picture, and actually we can all see what is happening to our country. We can all see these images of young men coming across on boats, and I just think this kind of press release is so disingenuous because it paints a picture of action actually being taken. It's not being taken, and yes, small boat numbers might be down somewhat this year on last year, but it remains to be seen whether actually we're seeing an uptick in other routes and whether actually this is purely because of a sort of lag because of weather, and we will see a surge in the coming months as summer really kicks in.
I guess they would say, Rob, that it's an extra 2 arrests a week, but I assume that your position is that, well, the actual litmus test is the number of migrants, boats still crossing, and again, since Labour took power, 70,000. So even if this is having some sort of effect, it's pretty much, it's null and void, really.
Yeah, and given how many people will now be involved in this trade, the industry has exploded since 2018. It's probably the only example of industrial growth Britain has actually got to point to. So there are therefore more people that you can get your hands on and arrest. But again, the key point here is that convictions have fallen in the last couple of years, already from a very low level, but they've somehow managed to achieve what you'd think would be the impossible and bring that number even lower. So again, this in no way will actually crack the gangs, smash the gangs, because as we see time and time again, what will simply happen is another individual steps into the plate, takes over the driving seat, assumes the apparatus, the social media profiles, the advertising, the actual the boats and so forth, the machinery and equipment, and things will continue. And until you actually stymie the demand of people wanting to come to Britain, there is always the incentive for people to take that risk, and it's a very remote risk of getting involved in people smuggling, because the rewards, the financial rewards, far outweigh the remote chance of you ending up in handcuffs, let alone ending up behind bars.
Yeah, Rob, thank you so much. Appreciate you as always. Thanks for coming back on The Late Show Live. Glynis has said, good morning, Glynis. On your say, the arrest won't stop the boats, and it hasn't. They're arresting small fry, not the heads of the gangs. They just replace them. It's like the war on drugs, isn't it? It's like whack-a-mole. You take them out, they'll come back on again just moments later, months later. Right, more coming up in the next hour, including a Chagos Islands exclusive.
I think they should keep it. I don't know why they're doing it. Do they need money?
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The unsettled theme does continue. A day of sunny spells, scattered showers, rain arriving later, and the winds will be picking up too. Through this morning, though, it's been a bright and fresh start across Scotland and eastern England. Showery outbreaks of rain breaking up across the country, leaving more widespread showers, especially across northern parts of England into Scotland. Northern Ireland turning drier this afternoon with more hazy sunshine developing, and here temperatures reaching up to 14 degrees across the southeast, highs of 14 to 16 degrees. As we go through the afternoon and into the evening time, those showers persisting across much of Scotland. Either side, across the far east and the far west, we should see some sunshine to end the day. Across Northern Ireland, though, we've got the next weather system approaching, so cloud will be increasing, some showery outbreaks of rain arriving by the end of the evening across the south, that persisting across Wales and the southwest of England. So outbreaks of rain during rush hour here, elsewhere holding on to showers. Those showers across eastern areas will start fading away and it will be replaced by wet and windy conditions. Outbreaks of rain more persistent and heavy than recent days, really holding on and pushing across the country through the overnight period, turning heavy over the hills. But with the rain, cloud and strong southwesterly winds, temperatures will be holding up as we start Tuesday morning. But it's a wet start to Tuesday morning. Outbreaks of rain pushing its way north and eastwards, eventually clearing most places, but lingering the longest across Scotland through much of the day. Behind that, sunny spells, blustery showers moving through. Those showers could be on the heavy side still, but pushing through pretty quickly, and temperatures lifting up to 17 to 19 degrees.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis,
in the car, in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
we're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good morning. Hope you're well. Live from Washington, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
I think they should keep it. I don't know why they're doing it. Do they need money?
Well, if you thought it all went quiet on the Chagos surrender, I've got a big, juicy exclusive just for you. Stay tuned. I'll reveal all the details in just a tick.
But I had a long talk with President Putin. I suggested a little bit of a ceasefire, and I think he might do that. He might announce something having to do with it.
Elsewhere, any chance of a ceasefire in Eastern Europe seems to have been dashed after a large-scale drone attack by Ukraine on Moscow left at least 3 people dead and several injured. Apparently, it was one of the worst attacks on Moscow by Ukraine since World War II.
Young man, you're making a big mistake. I'm making a big mistake.
Back in Blighty, a free speech row which I'm dying to get the opinion of my American panel of. A Christian pastor was arrested over preaching, criticising Islam and the transgender movement. Anyway, the investigation's been dropped. I'll speak to the lawyers who got him off. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Remember, no breaks this hour. Hello, good morning. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Let me know, viewers and listeners, what your Sunday has been like. Did you have a good day? Did you have a roast dinner? Maybe a cheeky beer or a glass of red wine? Did you watch the football? gbnews.com/your say. I'm keen to know. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel, Mark Albert, broadcaster and journalist, and the Daily Mail US political reporter, Victoria Churchill. And in London, GB News superstar comedian Paul Cox. Hello, Paul. How was your Sunday?
It was good, actually. Very chilled, very chilled. Didn't do a great deal, did a little bit of work, but not a great deal, actually, Ben. Would love to have spent more time laying around, but didn't manage that.
Well, that's what Sundays are for. Well done to you, Paul. Stick with us. We'll catch up in just a tick. Let's move on to our main news this hour, and it's a big, fat, juicy Chagos exclusive. A bill has just been launched in a bid to protect the sovereignty of Chagos and give the Chagosians self-determination. With me now is the head of communications at the Friends of British Overseas Territories, Rob Midgley. Hello, Rob. Good to see you. Right, tell us about this. Give us the details. It's a private members' bill coming next week, which will do what, Rob? Explain.
So just before the King's speech, the Chagos bill was defeated. It was brought down because the Americans didn't really support it. It ran out of time because they couldn't get the Americans on side. So now we've moved from the next phase of the campaign, which is we've saved Chagos, and now we need to secure Chagos. So a number of lords put forward suggested private members' bills for the oncoming Parliament. One of them succeeded, which was Lord Weir's, which I've just got in front of me, will affirm and protect the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. It will restrict any transfer of sovereignty without parliamentary approval and the Chagosian people, and then also provide protection of the territory's strategic defence important. So this is really important because this gives the Chagosians a say whether they can have the territory transferred in the future. So this solidifies the whole territory from ever being given away, basically makes it illegal to bring this back into Parliament in the future to be decided upon. So this is a huge moment for us, and it will really protect the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands going into the future. And what happens next is we'll have the first reading on the 4th of June, which will then hopefully go into the second reading. This will be in the Lords, so it goes through the normal process, first, second, third reading, and then we expect it to go in the Commons. Now, the Commons will be a big sticking point because, of course, there's a Labour majority there, but this bill supports self-determination. And in Labour's manifesto 2024 on page 120, they're batting for self-determination. So by not supporting this bill in the future, they're going against their manifesto commitments all over again. So it's in their interest to now support this and solidify the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands.
Fascinating. And we heard over the Greenland fiasco how, I mean, Keir Starmer, for example, saying the future of the Greenlanders should be decided by the Greenlanders alone. So why not apply that same logic to the Chagossians? Who's behind this bill, Rob?
So it's Lord Weir who has put it forward from the DUP in Northern Ireland. So he's the one who's put it forward. A number of lords put different sorts of bills forward, but this one was the one that was selected by the Lords to push through to the first reading.
OK, Rob, I guess if and when it does get to the Commons, it will be voted down by Labour because they're fond of U-turns, they're fond of hypocrisy, and yeah, we know how they've behaved since they were elected in July 2024. However, even if the vote does fail, what it will do, I guess, and maybe you can elaborate on this, is again, put much needed pressure, highlight the situation of the Chagossians and their plight, and indeed just shine a massive spotlight on, as I said, the hypocrisy of the government and indeed the future of the Chagos Islands and the Chagossians themselves.
No, absolutely. And let's not forget that the bill that was defeated and withdrawn before hasn't been brought back yet, and they don't plan to bring it back in at least the next few months. So by bringing this bill in now, it gets ahead of any potential bill in the future, which would null the whole thing out. So it's on the Labour MPs, you know, it's in their favour to support this bill to go through any embarrassment in the future. And they can come out on top saying that they support self-determination. So they have an opportunity now to make this succeed, to get behind the Chagossians and correct an historic injustice that, you know, they caused originally.
Lots of comments flying in on this. The squatting dictator, who's a member. Good evening, squatting dictator. You said Chagos bill to self-govern. Just watch Labour, especially Starmer, vote against it. It's what Starmer does when he gets a bloody nose. You said China will tell him to vote against it. I'm sure the PM would say China has absolutely no influence on him. And Alf, hello Alf, you've said great news about Chagos. Now we need to force Starmer to personally deliver the supplies and medicines he stopped Farage from delivering. What's going on with the guys who are on Chagos at the moment? Have they had supplies yet?
So they had one shipment of supplies a few weeks ago, and we're currently figuring out how to get the next shipment to go over. So I've been in touch with Mislin in the past few days. There's lots of planning going on. We're figuring out where all the old roads were, all the old infrastructure were, and how to make that sustainable, how the buildings will be built in the future. But also, we've discovered something else in the past few days, is that there's an organisation called the Chagos Conservation Trust, who have meant to be managing heritage sites, who've let this become dilapidated over the past few decades. And so we really want to work with them in actually trying to restore all these heritage sites now that exist across the Chagos Islands. And so, yeah, we've got a huge task in front of us now. But the main thing is we need to secure the territory, and then we can look at resettlement. So it's okay making all these plans now, but we need to secure the founders now.
OK. Rob, one last comment from Kez. Fingers crossed for the Chagos bill, says Kez. Starmer, Hermer and Philippe Sands have a lot riding on giving the Chagos Islands to China via Mauritius. Just hope they don't quickly give away the islands before they're kicked out.
No, it's very true. It's very true. We can't let them give away the islands at all whatsoever. They're not theirs to give away.
Yeah, indeed. Rob, thank you so much. Appreciate you as always. Come back soon when you have another update. Great exclusive. And we'll have all eyes and ears on that first reading, June the 4th, I think you said. So thank you, Rob. Yeah. Appreciate it. Let's get the thoughts of Paul Cox down the line in London. Paul, the Chagos fiasco, the surrender, which doesn't make sense to anybody, apart from Philippe Sands, KC, because he's getting a nice £8 million whack, according to the Daily Mail, from Mauritius for fighting for them over the years. This is the sort of flagship policy and move from the government, which is indicative, I argue, of just how incompetent they are. And if indeed this does fail, which it is failing so far, what does that say about the government and Labour and Keir Starmer?
Do you know what? We say the government quite often, and that attaches it to to the UK in some way. I genuinely believe this government, Labour government, is entirely detached from the UK. They're not our government, they're governing for their own interests, and we are just victims of it. That's the way it truly is now. And this is a product of ideology over reality. They would have said, these are human rights lawyers, so they're not politicians. These aren't men of great intellect. These are people who have spent their whole life making money out of the emotions of others. And they've identified that the Chagos deal was something that they could hold up to their community, to the people they serve, and say, look what we did for Great Britain. But that was an absolute nonsense. And of course, it didn't stack up when it met the scrutiny of reality. And reality said, why are you doing this? What is the benefit? Why are Mauritius getting paid so much? Why are we doing so much to benefit China? Why do we not consider the people of Chagos whatsoever? How come your ideology doesn't take into account the incumbent people of Chagos, the native people of Chagos? They didn't care for them whatsoever. And we saw that the very minute that Chagosians returned to the islands and said, we don't want you to give this away, Keir Starmer was infuriated. He does not believe in the things that he says. And like I say, I don't think that this is a government that is serving the people of the UK. It's acting outside of that remit and serving its own purposes. The best thing that can ever happen is that this Chagos deal is completely and utterly reversed, and that everybody involved is held to account. Well, there should be questions, there should be an inquiry. Why would anyone want to do this? What value was it at all, Ben?
Well, the government's position is that they were adhering to international law. There was that ICJ ruling saying that we needed to give the islands away to Mauritius, not back to Mauritius, because they never owned the damn islands in the first place, but we needed to give it away. So their argument is, Paul, they were following international law, and if you want to continue good relations with your international partners and keep your reputation intact, you must follow international law, Paul.
Position as presenter here, where you have to remain in the middle and impartial, but you know, I know that you probably along the same lines as I am. Who are the partners in international law? What is international law? International law seems to be the sort of thing the human rights lawyers like Keir Starmer can lean on whenever it suits them. If you break international law, who turns up? No one. If you break international law, who goes to prison? No one. Where's the prison? Nowhere. There is nobody being held accountable. Do Iran have to be held accountable? Do Russia have to be held accountable to international law? No, they do not. They act in their own interests. Obviously, we disagree with both of their own interests, but they act in their own interest. Keir Starmer, interestingly, is not acting in the interests of Great Britain at all. He's not in the people of Great Britain at all. So you tell me who he's serving that abides by international law.
Well, international lawyers, I guess. Let's ask the panel here in America. Mark, international law. I mean, you are international law, not you. Maybe don't know. Maybe
I'm not a lawyer, and I play one on TV.
Maybe at weekends, but America surely is international law. I mean, do you believe in international law yourself?
So, after World War II, the United Nations, for whatever you think of the United Nations today, did form a structure where there could be international law and a rules-based order. This particular issue with now naval support base Diego Garcia, which the US and the UK have been used, this is now inextricably tied to this because the UK denied the US use of the base for offensive operations in Iran.
Yes.
And so initially the Trump administration was supporting handing over Chagos Islands, and then they were against it. But now with what happened with the UK denying the US use of the space, it is tied together and it's not going to be untwined.
Yeah, and I don't think Trump even knew much of the detail. He thought that we were getting paid for giving the islands away. I mean, goodness knows what his reaction was when he found out we were paying them to take it away from us. But just on the topic, Mark, of international law, I mean, does it, to Paul's point, Iran doesn't follow international law, Russia doesn't, many other countries don't. So why, I mean, America, I would argue, has breached international law in recent years, maybe with Venezuelan drug boats. Not saying it's a good or a bad thing. I actually support that. But what is international law?
So first of all, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. Second of all, I would say that this is sort of like being at recess on the schoolyard and the rule says you can't hit anybody and you hit somebody and they say, well, but Johnny hit me first. There is a structure and a law, and the rule says don't hit people when you're at recess on the schoolyard. And so are the cops going to come if you hit somebody? I don't know. That's a day-to-day decision. But you still shouldn't hit somebody if the law is don't hit somebody on the play yard.
Unless you're being smacked first, which I would argue charging British taxpayers 35, what's the figure, Paul? 40 billion quid over a century to give away your own sovereign territory. That, for me, is a slap in the jaws. Victoria, what's your take on international law? Trump doesn't follow international law.
No, I mean, look, at least on Capitol Hill, where I spend most of my time, international law is kind of this bogeyman, if you will, that particularly Democrat senators, particularly since the strikes in Iran last summer and then the intervention in Venezuela, they've said that, you know, Trump is in violation of all these things as their justification to bring up, for example, the War Powers Act numerous times. There's actually a vote where it tied just last week, and that meant that the resolution in the House of Representatives failed. But, you know, they keep trying to find the Trump administration guilty of these things with a slap on the wrist on Capitol Hill. And so I think that's really where you see international law being used. It in itself is not something that can be used kind of as a punishable offense, if you will, but it's being used, at least here domestically, in an attempt to further make a justification for somebody's point of view.
I just think it's utterly useless. I mean, I would argue America is the law. You are, and I know it's a cliche, you are the world police. What are you going to do if Trump breaks international law? What are you going to do about it?
I mean, that's a good question, right? It goes back to the Teddy Roosevelt idea of walk softly and carry a big stick. I think lots of people in America still view ourselves as the big stick on the world stage. For example, also looking at, for example, Benjamin Netanyahu in the International Criminal Court, there was kind of a lot of countries where Netanyahu is not welcome because he is quote unquote in violation of international law. And, in the U.S., he's constantly being welcomed. He spoke, I believe it was at the UN last year or early this year. And, if the U.S. is not enforcing it right, that's a good question. Then who is? But I also think that, again, it's used as justification for other things, other ways that countries are willing and able to act against people that they see in violation of these things.
Okay, and finally, Mark, just to you, just on the Diego Garcia issue, do you agree with me that President Trump used Diego Garcia, of which I argue, well, I know actually, he didn't really know much about before it all kicked off. He used it as leverage to whack Keir Starmer with when he didn't get involved in Greenland, support him in Greenland. That's when he mentioned it the first time. And secondly, latterly, with the Iran situation, he's used it as a weapon, if you will, to whack Keir Starmer with, metaphorically.
And the Strait of Hormuz, and there are several other issues as well. No doubt that it has built on this pile of items that President Trump has used in public. We don't know about in private, but in public, to whack your PM, as you said.
Mr. Bumfuzzle, that's your name, no relation to me, has said on your say, the Nazis were tried under international law. Okay, good point. I will say, though, just Paul, as a passing comment to you, there needs to be some sort of inquiry into this Chagos mystery, because it is a mystery. So much of it stinks, as I described, like kippers at breakfast. You had the former, was it the Mauritian PM, who was nicked with thousands of pounds worth, maybe even millions of pounds worth of cash in briefcases. Very bizarrely, and pertinently to this situation, dozens of blank British visas, and then he was kicked out of office, and then suddenly this Chagos deal came up. None of it makes sense. Charging the British taxpayer for the privilege of giving away the territory. Philippe Sands KC, who is a best friend of Keir Starmer from the North London dinner set, he's an international lawyer, both at, was it Matrix Chambers in North London, he's a key founder of Matrix Chambers. None of it makes sense. And I argue, when this is said and done for good, there needs to be some sort of inquiry into what the hell was going on there. Maybe nothing was going on. Maybe it's all quite genuine and above board, but it stinks. It doesn't smell right on the surface.
Yeah, look, I'd go even further and say there would need to be an inquiry into this particular government from July 2024 to our current position and beyond. This government has acted against the people of Great Britain. Undoubtedly, they've clamped down on free speech. They've called anyone who disagrees with them far right. These are people that don't believe in a certain type of British person. They believe British people should be ultra-liberal, should be ultra-progressive, and if they don't fall in line with their ideology, they should be punished. This is not Britain. We're going back to what we were discussing earlier. No part of historical British culture includes that. We would call that treason previously. And it's probably too strong a word, I don't know, but inquiries need to be had. And the only way you can have those inquiries, by the way, is to have it entirely independent from anyone in the UK. Because can you imagine anyone from the blob, from the hierarchy, undertaking that independently? Not at all.
Yeah, well said, Paul. And I think many viewers and listeners watching this now would agree with you. I do as well. It's the best description. It stinks like kippers at breakfast, wafting the house out. Right, Paul, thank you very much. Here was Foreign Minister Stephen Doherty last month announcing the Chagos Islands deal had been paused indefinitely because of US President Donald Trump pulling his support.
The treaty was tested thoroughly at all levels of the United States system under 2 administrations and found to be robust. Throughout this process, we have also been clear that we could not let the treaty enter into force without US support. However, in recent weeks, the position of the United States President appears to have changed, and this means that in practical terms, it has become impossible to agree at political level an update to the 1966 UK-US agreement concerning the availability of defence purposes of the British Indian Ocean Territory.
Very good. Right, let's move on, shall we? Ukraine yesterday launched their biggest attack on Moscow in a year, firing nearly 600 drones in strikes described as a retaliation for attacks on Kyiv. At least 4 people were killed in Moscow, dozens more were wounded, and that's according to Russian authorities. And also breaking in the last few moments, Ukraine's southern Odessa region has come under a drone attack with residential buildings struck, and that's according to Odessa's regional governor via a social media post. So lots of back and forth going on, but the more pressing situation was this attack in Moscow yesterday. Information about casualties in Odessa is yet to be verified, but I'm keen to learn more about this Moscow situation. I'm joined now by the CEO of America-Ukraine Strategic Partners, Davis Richardson. Davis, great to see you. This was an extraordinary attack, and I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the worst strikes on Moscow since World War II?
Yes, it's so bad that even the Russian government is admitting that it was the worst attack not only since World War II, but since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. The Ukrainian army is striking very deep into Russian territory, and also breaking, President Zelensky acknowledged that there's going to be even more of these attacks deep into Russian territory. I think it's important to remember that the attack that Ukraine did on Russian territory came after Russia had launched one of its own aggressive attacks on Ukraine, which actually killed 25 innocent civilians right after the Ukrainian government took a pause for the Russian peace parade.
So we're seeing footage now. This is central Moscow yesterday. We'll just get that back up for you. What was hit? Was it an oil refinery? I read somewhere. Is that the cause for the sort of massive billowing of thick black smoke into the Russian skyline?
There were oil refineries. There were also a few residential buildings right outside of Moscow, showing that this is not just near frontline communities, but it's also taking the fight directly to the Russian capital itself. So Russian President Vladimir Putin had all the reason to worry that something might have happened for the Victory Day parade.
And what's changed, Davis, over recent years? Am I right in thinking that Ukraine now has the capability to manufacture a lot of their own missiles in their homeland instead of relying on, say, the EU or other partners? They've got these long-range, what are they called? Is it Flamingo missiles as well that they're now making domestically, which they can now lob across the border in much more higher intensity than they were, say, at the start of the conflicts, where they were relying on getting those kind of missiles, in this example, from outside partners? All right. I think we've lost your sound, Davis. Okay, Davis, we'll come back to you in a second. We've lost your sound temporarily. Okay, you're back. David, let's go back to you. Sorry, David, start again if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Well, the Flamingo is just one of the ballistic missile projects which emerged since 2022. It's actually interesting because Mike Pompeo actually serves on the board of advisors of that particular company. But what you're seeing is hundreds and hundreds of FPV drones being launched by both countries. So Russia launched 600 FPV drones, Ukraine launched about 500, and these FPV drones are actually governed by AI. So you have hundreds of swarms of AI drones which are now striking into territory. This is actually what was behind the Ukrainian military's Operation Spiderweb attack, which last summer, which took down the Russian Air Force bases.
It's extraordinary. Just last question, Davis, or last point really. This whole conflict since, what, 2022 started out with sort of old school trench warfare, and that is still going on now. You know, poor young teenagers, 18-year-old boys slaughtering each other in trenches, you know, akin to World War II. And now almost sort of Call of Duty-esque, we've developed into what we've seen in real time, drone warfare, these swarms of drones. I've seen plenty of videos doing the rounds on Reddit where soldiers are being chased by drones that are honing in on them. They're trying to get them away with shotguns. I mean, we are now in a new age of warfare that has never been seen before, particularly with drones. I just found it fascinating how we've gone from trench warfare, which is still going on, but to now it's pretty much all drone capability, isn't it, Davis?
Absolutely. It's the greatest revolution of military affairs since World War II, and you're going to see a lot more of it. Electronic warfare systems, swarms of AI drones. Actually, one of the Ukrainian companies, Swarmer, which I invested in a few years ago, actually just went public on NASDAQ and is backed by Eric Prince. So in addition to all of the revolution that you're seeing in military affairs, you're starting to see private business and a lot of joint ventures between American companies, United Kingdom companies, the UK company Prevail Systems, partnered with Skyton, a great Ukrainian defense company. So you're starting to see the outlines and the formalization of joint ventures, which is really, that's a whole other thing that's also about to hit. These things are about to be produced in mass globally.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I think war is the worst of humanity, but I take a keen interest in military development, as you said, all these defence companies, just the involvement of war, the theatre of war. I find it fascinating. Hopefully this conflict comes to an end soon. Davis, appreciate it. Thanks very much. Davis Richardson, CEO of America-Ukraine Strategic Partners. Interesting point from Davis there at the end about investing in sort of new drone companies and so on. Would you have any moral problem investing in a defense company making drones?
Well, I think if we are in traditional 401ks and Roth IRA investments, they do include the top 500 companies in the U.S., which, of course, a lot of the time are the ones manufacturing defense products.
Yeah, Lockheed.
Yeah.
Who else is there? BAE in the UK. Same question to you, Mark.
A lot of ETFs and all those funds that mirror the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq. They're investing in some of these companies. Yeah. What I was really interested in, he was talking about the greatest revolution of warfare since World War II. According to the International Study for War, Russia lost more land in April than it conquered, and for the last 2 months, its gain of territories has gone down, while Ukraine's attacks within Russia have gone up. Yeah. I'm curious about the sea change here in momentum and whether it is permanent or this is just sort of a start of the year increase by Ukraine because of its new capabilities to go deeper into Russian territory.
Yeah, those Flamingo missiles, which they were having to source from third parties at the start of the conflict, I think, as far as I remember off the top of my head, they were launching something like 700 over the course of the first year. Now it's around 7,000. Wow. So yeah, dramatically increased. Lots of you commenting. Actually, I hope this does come to an end. I was always quite indifferent on the Ukraine-Russia war. The argument was if we don't stop Russia now and give billions to Ukraine, they'll be on the doorstep of Poland and the UK next. But actually, having seen what Russia's done and invade a sovereign country, I'm quite happy to see them get a walloping from Ukraine now.
I believe I just read that there was a war game in the last couple of days by some NATO allies, and that Russia going into Lithuania and then going east from their little enclave of Kaliningrad, that NATO was essentially severed within 24 hours because of paralysis in the political realm. And so, if anything, the last 4.5 years has shown us that paralysis aids Russia. Look what happened in 2014 when Russia and Putin went into Crimea, and then they went into Georgia and all this stuff. So I think that there is a lot of reporting that if Putin were to win in Ukraine, where does he stop next? Where would he go next?
I don't buy the argument. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think I'm very interested in the idea that, you know, as we're seeing kind of this resurgence of right-wing parties all across Europe, I wonder if domestically a lot of governments would be under pressure to not intervene in any kind of conflict, right? Because we're seeing it here in the U.S. with President Trump. You know, people domestically, I think, are quite upset that we even got involved in Iran. And so I think as we're seeing these right-wing movements take over Europe, people want their governments to be focused domestically and not internationally. And I think that really too much of the focus is international when, you know, people are struggling, right? We were talking earlier, or one of your guests, I think earlier, said that, you know, the GDP of Germany has slid significantly. And so when we're looking at all those kinds of things domestically, I think the only thing that is interesting to point out is that historically, wars have kind of helped actually bolster GDP because it kind of gets people on the same page. And, you know, I was looking at the estimates. I might pull them for a later segment, but they were talking on Capitol Hill last week, and then 3 weeks ago, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he's been all over testifying on the budget, and he was asked point blank twice, he and his staffers that were with him, what does this cost to the American people? And, you know, both times he didn't really want to give an answer, and he eventually did have to, but I think, again, that's the pressure, right, is that we're all paying for this as American taxpayers, and for a lot of people, they're asking why, and I think across Europe, if things were to escalate, people would be asking the same questions.
I think it's $29 billion, right, is the estimate the Pentagon family gave for the U.S. involvement in Iran.
Yeah, so I think it's 29. I think it's up from 25 at the end of April, so $4 billion increase in just about a month.
And the Trump administration has already made a 50% increase in the request for the Pentagon overall budget for next fiscal year.
Well, there we go. Lots of comments on this. Kat Zeb has said, let's be transparent about who has paid for everything for Ukraine, not Ukraine. Mr. Bumfuzzle's back. He says, if it's a defense company, there's no morality in question. Pseudo Massa said, I would definitely invest in a drone company, but I also wouldn't be sending Ukraine any money. And somebody else said, look up Zelensky's net worth. I mean, yeah, I mean, Ukraine, maybe one of the most corrupt countries on earth before this war. But yeah, isolated point on its own. Quite glad to see Russia, Moscow getting a kicking today. I'm no fan of Putin, couldn't care less. Right, gbnews.com/your say. Keep those comments coming in. Let's take a look at the front pages, shall we? Back home in the UK with Paul Cox down the line as well, starting with the Express. Headline reads, voters are not fools and deserve honesty. That's according to Nigel Farage, who says open borders, Burnham by-election is a battle over Brexit betrayal. Goodness me, that's a mouthful, isn't it? The open borders Burnham by-election is a battle over Brexit betrayal. Did they do that on purpose? The Daily Mail front page, backlash over Brexit betrayal, another one. The Daily Star, I love this one, and maybe we can talk about this at the end of the show, Paul Cox. Andy Burnham, I'd get rid of VAR. Well, it certainly helped Arsenal out against West Ham of the week, but otherwise I'd still get rid of it. The Metro, UK faces summer in limbo. This is a story on the political situation. The Times, Burnham's allies accuse Streeting of sabotage. The iPaper, Streeting will stand for PM on pledge to rejoin the European Union. The Guardian, Burnham facing perilous race in Crunch by-election. Paul, I guess I posted on X about this earlier, which is Labour had 14 years to prepare themselves for power. They had 14 long years to get their eggs in a row. They've been in power for around 22 months, and already they are fighting like rats in a sack, and it just proves how utterly useless they are. They're collapsing already, not even 2 years into the job, having waited so long to get to this point.
And they're fighting like rats in a sack. That's Camilla Tom now, you know that. You probably don't even know, but subconsciously, that advert from GB News is seeping into your mind, Ben. Sometimes I wake up going, and they're fighting like rats in a sack. Anyway, that's not what you asked me. What you asked me was... What did you ask me, Ben?
I just said they've been waiting 14 years, they're not even 2 years into the job, and they're just utterly useless.
Well, yes, very well summed up, by the way, Ben, expertly done. Yes, absolutely, they weren't ready to govern. They're not governing now. They don't govern for the people of the UK, they govern for themselves, as I've already said. And you would have thought that anyone with that amount of preparation would come in with some idea of what they're going to do, and they simply haven't done it. Now, to balance this out, you know, and I don't want to support the Labour Party, but it's very difficult to go about your business if you're governing in this country, because essentially the country's run by the blob, it's run by the civil servants. But the counter-argument to that is the civil servants are the left-wing Liberal progressives, which Keir Starmer and his Labour Party are. So the civil service are on their side. They do not have any barriers whatsoever to push forward. They simply don't know they don't know how to govern, they don't know what they want to do, and their ideology is always asking questions but never ever coming up with answers, Ben.
Yeah, which is, as I said, it's a complete shock, really. Well, not a shock if you consider Labour's history, but a complete shock where they've had so much time to prepare themselves for it. Paul, very quickly, on the bottom of the Telegraph, I'd like to look at this story. I think you spoke about it earlier this evening. Councils hand out blue badge privileges for ADHD. So basically, they're giving away blue badges where you can park in disabled bays for having ADHD. And I was speaking about this to a friend this week. Everybody now, a lot of people I know, friends of friends, acquaintances, husbands and wives, they all have been diagnosed with ADHD. Should people with ADHD, I don't think ADHD exists actually, but do you think people with ADHD should be given blue badges?
Well, the short, swift answer to that is no. I'm often diagnosed by completely untrained people as having ADHD. Normally people that spend longer than about 3 hours with me in a week say, you've definitely got ADHD. That's not true. I can just be either very distracted very quickly or hyper-focused. It's just the way I am. However, Barry Gardner of Labour MP fame was on that show earlier, and he did a rousing speech, OK? And we don't always agree with Barry, but he's a good egg, Barry. And he was talking about constituents of his that were struggling to get blue badges for very legitimate reasons. The idea that we could afford to give out blue badges for people with ADHD is preposterous, absolutely preposterous. And the question I would ask is why? Why do we need to give a blue... a blue badge is very important for a lot of people. If you've got a disability and mobility is an issue of yours, having a blue badge and being able to park close to where you need to go is a tremendous benefit, and one I think many people deserve. Yeah. But people who've got ADHD simply do not deserve that. I can't understand how.
Yeah, it's a massive gripe of mine, actually. People parking in disabled bays and, indeed, parent-child bays. You know, the sort of wider bays where you can get, I don't know, get the kids out of the car. I want to talk about ADHD, though. Am I being controversial in saying I don't think it really exists? Let me explain as well. I think people excel at different things. Some people excel at maybe being practical and building things with wood, and maybe getting into carpentry, and maybe playing sport, as opposed to sitting in a classroom and digesting information and just remembering it over and over to take in an exam. I think just because you're bad, maybe not bad is the wrong word, maybe you're slower at one aspect of life and you can't concentrate on that compared to something else that maybe you're more enthusiastic about and you can concentrate and get in the vibe of. Why is that ADHD? Why do we have to medicate that and put a label on it?
OK, so my opinion of what happens here is this is an evolution of things. You know, we were all children once. We all, you know, recognise behaviours in children now that are diagnosed as behaviours maybe we had, or behaviours other children around us had when we were growing up, and there wasn't a diagnosis. So, you know, maybe they were naughty or unruly or whatever. We never really had a diagnosis. So at the essence of this is something quite practical and quite useful. It's giving something a label, which I hate to do, but giving something a label to help people recognise that maybe someone needs a bit of support. Unfortunately, it immediately becomes politicised, it immediately becomes monetised, and what you end up with is people who would love an excuse, because we live in a victim culture, by the way. If you can become a victim, that is a commodity. Anyone who's a victim of anything is on to a winner. So if you've got ADHD, it can explain away why you're a bit of a wally. So, you know, if you go through life just upsetting people, but at the end of the week you can go, sorry about that, I've got ADHD, you know, it makes them feel better. But I do believe at the essence of this, there is something that needs to be addressed in some children, in some adults, to help them out. But I think this has gone way too far, along with absolutely everything in the progressive liberalism that we see in modern life, by the way. It just takes something of any value and just extrapolates it out so it's of no use to anybody.
Pseudo Mass has said on your say, I have ADHD and I know that some people can benefit from some help, but it's in extreme circumstances. The trouble is that everybody thinks they've now got ADHD or they're autistic. It's a fad from social media. You said it does exist, but it only requires financial help in very extreme circumstances. And Kathy said, one question you get asked is how far can you walk? People with ADHD alone should not get a badge. It doesn't affect the legs. Let's get the thoughts of my panel here in DC. Does ADHD exist, Victoria?
I do think it does exist for some people, but I also do think that it is massively overplayed, particularly in this day and age where, you know, we're all constantly on our phones and, you know, we like short form content and we need to constantly be scrolling and clicking. But I would actually think, at least as much as I know about ADHD, it's actually better for you to kind of get out and get the jitters out and go for a walk. So I would actually think you'd want to park further away if you're going somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Cassie has said, Cassie Ginn, hello Cassie, good morning. You've said ADHD does exist, Ben. I'm 46 and got diagnosed last year. My whole life makes sense now. There's lots of struggles that comes with ADHD. That's not talked about enough. It's not just about distractions and being hyperactive. You have no idea the depth it goes. Glynis has said people with ADHD are more prone to driving accidents, often because of overestimation of abilities. Cassie, interesting comment. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Look, I'm not a medical expert. I was just kind of, giving my real world take, which is, I think some people just excel at different things.
So let's go to research by the Cleveland Clinic. They're just like the Mayo Clinic here in the US. They're very highly thought of. They say on their website there are gene studies consistently indicating that ADHD is a genetic condition. Research studying MRI brain scans of more than 3,000 children and adults found differences in the brain size of kids who have ADHD and those who don't. The children with ADHD had smaller brains with noticeable size differences in the parts of the brain associated with emotional control, self-control, memory, and learning.
Interesting. And where was that study? What was the
Cleveland Clinic.
The sample size?
3,000.
3,000. Yeah. I don't know. Someone else said, Sean, Ben, you're right. ADHD wasn't real. It's most probably autism. And again, autism's another one to talk about. I mean, why can't we just celebrate people being individual? And some people are quirky, some people are eccentric, some people are good at using their hands and building things. Some people like sports, some people like sitting down and digesting information from a whiteboard.
I mean, I think you make a good point, Ben, and I think the other thing that's important to point out here is that I think, you know, boys, particularly school-age boys, are a lot more prone to be diagnosed with ADHD and autism because the school system is not made for them. I think there's been, you know, multiple studies on this.
I hated school.
Is that
so inane.
Boys want to be going out, running around at recess, playing sports. They don't necessarily want to be sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. And so, you know, people are put in this routine space, and if they're not able to function, they're diagnosed with a lot of issues. And again, I think it's interesting that men and boys are diagnosed with it at much higher rates than girls.
3 to 1. 3 to 1 according to the CDC.
Really?
Yep, 3 to 1.
Men with ADHD, 3 to 1.
Female ratio of 3 to 1.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Right, keep those comments coming in. gbnews.com/your say. Am I right? Am I wrong? I'm probably wrong, but that's my opinion anyway. Right, let's move on. Really, I was about to say interesting story. Pretty scary, actually. 2 US Navy jets crashed mid-air today during the Gunfighter Skies air show, which, the pilots did eject successfully, but it's a really horrific video on your screen now, showing 2 EA-18G Growler jets colliding mid-air before spinning towards the ground in a fiery crash amid black plumes of smoke. 4 parachutes were visible deploying near the crash site, and the jets, of course, went up in a fireball, a massive blaze. The pilots are okay. Did you see this today, Mark?
I did see this, yeah. It's
how on earth does that happen?
So they were flying in formation is what I understand, and that can be, of course, very complicated when you're going at those altitudes and those speeds. And so certainly my thoughts with those service members, and I'm glad that they all were able to eject. I think the Red Arrows from Great Britain are coming here for the 250th anniversary.
They are. I saw that today. They're doing a display. Is it over DC?
They're doing, I think, DC, New York, and is it New Orleans?
Great. Yeah, I can't wait for that. Yeah. And what are your equivalent of the Red Arrows called? Is it the Blue Angels?
Blue
Yeah.
Angels, yes.
I've not seen them yet. Did you see this today, this clip, Victoria?
No, it's actually my first seeing of it. Definitely really glad that everybody involved is okay. You know, I would be terrified of landing in that giant plume of smoke of everything going on. And that's you know, great expert tacticians there trying to make sure they didn't land on that wreckage that was just below them.
The air show was in Idaho. It happened at midday while the aircraft were performing an aerial demonstration during the show. It reminds me, you guys maybe won't be aware of the Shoreham air disaster in the UK. Have you heard of that? I was born in Shoreham. Paul Cox, are you still there? Do you remember the Shoreham air show disaster a few years back? Literally down the road from me. Actually, one of my my wife's friends died in the crash. Do you remember it? And there was a massive court case. The Hawker Hunter jet was... Yeah, go on, you explain.
Yeah, so this was I mean, you probably know better because you were local, but I'm not too far down the road, so it was on my local news a lot too. And this is where the plane came onto the motorway. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, lots of cars sat in traffic at the red light on the dual carriageway, and the Hawker Hunter jet just ploughed into the back of them. It was trying to do a loop-the-loop, but he pulled up. He was far too low, and he pulled up far too late, and he ended up careering into the road. I think 12 people died, as far as I remember.
Yeah, and a lot of those people died because they were sat in traffic on that road. Very, very, very unfortunate. I've never actually been to an air show. Farnborough's not too far from where I live, and it's a huge air show. Probably the biggest air show in the UK is in Farnborough once a year, and you often see these things. But at the same time, you often see these accidents too. It's incredibly dangerous. What we got to see there, interestingly, and thank goodness no one was hurt because there was no one on the ground, is how well people can escape from these if they're very well trained. So there was something on display there. Unfortunately, what often happens is these are taking place in the UK, and particularly in fairly confined spaces. Shoreham, Farnborough, you know, the UK is not a big place. Look at all the space around there. When this happens in the UK, there is often people extremely close by, residential areas, motorways, freeways, as you would call them in the US, very close by. This is very... I don't know what we do, Ben. I'm in a sort of pains to say... I don't want to say we should never have this. I think it's fascinating. It's a great way to display human ingenuity, but, you know, it seems an unnecessary way to put people at risk sometimes.
No, let's ban it and criminalise it. That's what we do with any bit of fun these days.
There you go.
I think after Shoreham, they did ban air shows over built-up areas. So, for example, they now have to do the displays over the sea. I don't think Shoreham is even happening anymore, but there was other ones as well where I think they're now prohibited, according to the CAA, from performing over built-up areas. Yeah, fascinating trial. I sat in the trial for Shoreham. The pilot, his excuse was, and he got off in the end, that he blacked out at the top of the loop and he wasn't able to pull out of it, and it stuck. He got off. Right, let's get a quick look at your weather. Back in just a tick.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The unsettled theme does continue. A day of sunny spells, scattered showers, rain arriving later, and the winds will be picking up too. Through this morning, though, it's been a bright and fresh start across Scotland and eastern England. Showery outbreaks of rain breaking up across the country, leaving more widespread showers, especially across northern parts of England into Scotland. Northern Ireland turning drier this afternoon with more hazy sunshine developing, and here temperatures reaching up to 14 degrees across the southeast, highs of 14 to 16 degrees. As we go through the afternoon and into the evening time, those showers persisting across much of Scotland. Either side, across the far east and the far west, we should see some sunshine to end the day. Across Northern Ireland, though, we've got the next weather system approaching, so cloud will be increasing, some showery outbreaks of rain arriving by the end of the evening across the south, that persisting across Wales and the southwest of England. So outbreaks of rain during rush hour here, elsewhere holding on to showers. Those showers across eastern areas will start fading away and it will be replaced by wet and windy conditions. Outbreaks of rain, more persistent and heavy than recent days, really holding on and pushing across the country through the overnight period, turning heavy over the hills. But with the rain, cloud and strong southwesterly winds, temperatures will be holding up as we start Tuesday morning. But it's a wet start to Tuesday morning. Outbreaks of rain pushing its way north and eastwards, eventually clearing most places, but lingering the longest across Scotland through much of the day. Behind that, sunny spells, blustery showers moving through. Those showers could be on the heavy side still, but pushing through pretty quickly, and temperatures lifting up to 17 to 19 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Right, here's a story you don't want to miss. Police have dropped an investigation into a Christian preacher, supported by the White House actually, in what some are calling a big win for free speech, and it certainly is. So this guy's name, Dia Moodley, he was a 58-year-old evangelical pastor. He was arrested for inciting religious hatred in November last year in Bristol after giving a street sermon criticising Islam and the transgender movement. Avon and Somerset Police confirmed they've dropped their hate crime investigation into him, stating no further action will be taken. This is the moment from his arrest last year. Take a look.
Young man, you're making a big mistake. You're making a big mistake. You're not checking eyewitnesses. We have recordings. We have recordings. You have recordings. Yeah. We've got a quick YouTube round, aren't we? No, you're making a big mistake. You're taking one witness account over another. Circumstances arrest, we got multiple reports that you have been inciting religious hate.
So Mr Moodley was basically preaching the gospel, talking about Jesus, but also criticising Islam as well, and as I said, the transgender movement. He was represented in his case by the British arm of the Alliance for Defending Freedom, and I'm joined now by the senior counsel at the ADL, Sean Nelson. Sean, great to see you. This was extraordinary because it's basically, this case was blasphemy laws. He was arrested for inciting religious hatred or some nonsense like that, but that's what it was. It was blasphemy laws, which has now been dropped thanks to your organisation.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Ben, and I think that's exactly right, and it's something that's an extremely worrying trend across the West, but especially within the United Kingdom. There's more online post-arrests.
12,000 a year.
12,000, more than anywhere, and I work on cases all across the world, and in Nigeria, Algeria, all sorts of different places, but in the UK, you can get arrested for simply saying, this is what Jesus Christ taught, this is what Muhammad taught, you know, I prefer Jesus Christ on this one, or by just saying, here's a man, here's a woman, that's all there is. That's enough to get you arrested. And it's not just the arrest, but he wasn't able to preach for the entire 4 or 5 months following this back in November. So that means that during Christmas, he can't spread the gospel. During Easter, he actually got enough bravery up and he said, okay, I have to go out there for Easter. But during that Easter time where he was preaching, he actually got some direct threats thrown at him. There was a Muslim man who came up and said, hey, if you keep saying this stuff, I'm going to get my friends to come get you.
I saw that clip earlier today. He was approached by somebody, a Muslim man, who said, if you keep talking about Muhammad like that, he said in this clip, I will get my boys to come down here and sort you out. The police, Sean, did nothing about that. So they arrested the Christian preacher for inciting religious hatred, whatever the hell that means, and yet did nothing when this new video surfaced of him being threatened, literally saying, I will get my boys down here to sort you out if you keep talking about Muhammad.
That's exactly right. And people talk about the two-tier system of policing, and that's what's happening right here. You have somebody simply explaining, here's what I believe as a Christian, take it or leave it. You can walk away if you don't like it. And then somebody else comes up and says, hey, I don't like what you're saying, I'm going to beat you up. And yet, who gets arrested? The Christian preacher just standing there preaching the gospel. It's absolutely outrageous.
So what's going on there? What is that? Why is there two-tier policing when it comes to your religious affiliation?
Well, I think a lot of people who unfortunately run many of our governments are really threatened by people with traditional values. They say, no, that's bigoted. That's something in the past. That's not what we're going to have in our harmonious community, our inclusive community. And yet they want everybody to believe the same things to be inclusive. That doesn't make any sense. What should be an inclusive place is where you're allowed to preach different things. You're allowed to disagree and have disagreements. Did this man come up and say, hey, I have a disagreement, let's have a discussion? No, he just threatened violence, and I think that's wrong. And it's especially wrong when somebody comes up and tries to arrest you just because you're preaching the gospel. You have that happening in the UK. You've had people convicted in Finland for simply stating their beliefs, again, about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. Päivi Räsänen, yes, you have people who are convicted just for silently praying in their head outside abortion clinics. There is a crisis of free speech, unfortunately, throughout Europe, throughout the West, and the UK is sadly leading the charge.
And it's embarrassing, actually, as a Brit, being here in America, seeing how fiercely you defend free speech. It's embarrassing for me as a Brit when we hear about these stories and we get you in. Sean, thank you so much. Appreciate it. The Avon and Somerset police said there was no further evidence and they dropped the investigation. Right, still ahead on the Late Show Live in just a tick. More coming up after your weather. See you in a sec.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The unsettled theme does continue. A day of sunny spells, scattered showers, rain arriving later, and the winds will be picking up too. Through this morning, though, it's been a bright and fresh start across Scotland and eastern England. Showery outbreaks of rain breaking up across the country, leaving more widespread showers, especially across northern parts of England into Scotland. Northern Ireland turning drier this afternoon with more hazy sunshine developing, and here temperatures reaching up to 14 degrees across the southeast, highs of 14 to 16 degrees. As we go through the afternoon and into the evening time, those showers persisting across much of Scotland. Either side, across the far east and the far west, we should see some sunshine to end the day. Across Northern Ireland, though, we've got the next weather system approaching, so cloud will be increasing, some showery outbreaks of rain arriving by the end of the evening across the south, that persisting across Wales and the southwest of England. So outbreaks of rain during rush hour here, elsewhere holding on to showers. Those showers across eastern areas will start fading away and it will be replaced by wet and windy conditions. Outbreaks of rain more persistent and heavy than recent days, really holding on and pushing across the country through the overnight period, turning heavy over the hills. But with the rain, cloud and strong southwesterly winds, temperatures will be holding up as we start Tuesday morning. But it's a wet start to Tuesday morning. Outbreaks of rain pushing its way north and eastwards, eventually clearing most places, but lingering the longest across Scotland through much of the day. Behind that, sunny spells, blustery showers moving through. Those showers could be on the heavy side still, but pushing through pretty quickly, and temperatures lifting up to 17 to 19 degrees.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again
to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good morning. Live from Washington, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
I'm not going to be much more patient. No, I'm not. They should make a deal. Any sane person would make a deal. But they might be crazy.
Breaking tonight, President Trump has said the clock is ticking for Iran over the war, and he warned the regime there won't be anything left of them if they don't come to the table soon and agree a deal. I'll be joined by an Iraq veteran next.
Cuba's got problems. We'll finish one first. I like to finish a job.
Well, there's the president again, this time on Cuba. Apparently they've acquired more than 300 military drones and are discussing plans to use them to attack the US. Do they have a death wish? I'll speak to an expert and a Cuban in just a sec. I'm Ben Leo. This is The Late Show Live. No breaks this hour. Good morning to you. Tonight, President Trump has warned Iran the clock is ticking as talks to end the war have stalled. He took to Truth Social to say they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. Apparently this came after a call, by the way, with Benjamin Netanyahu. But with me now is a US Army veteran who served in Iraq, Justin McLean. Justin, great to see you. Thank you for joining The Late Show Live. I was just saying to you off air, I support President Trump in this conflict. However, I am getting a little bit bored of the threats. Yeah. Wiping out the civilization, going to blow up the bridges, going to blow up power plants. Just, look, I'm not a war hawk, but just finish the job or come to some sort of deal that they'll be happy with.
Yeah. We need to take a lot of things into consideration. We have a lot of allies. This is a global matter with a major superpower. And you have the Strait of Hormuz, but yeah, you run into the risk of giving them time to prepare and giving them time to maybe launch a counteroffensive, maybe even here stateside. So yeah, sometimes you just need to rip the Band-Aid off and say, listen, enough is enough. This is the red line and you've crossed it.
Do you support the conflict?
I do, to an extent. As an Iraq combat veteran, I don't really support boots on the ground. I never want to see my brothers in arms, my brothers and sisters in arms, in harm's way. Maybe as far as special operations, SAS, Green Berets. But anything past that, no. I think if Trump's going to do it, he needs to just pull the trigger on it and get it done.
There are suggestions that the only way to get hold of Iran's enriched uranium, which is the clincher in all this, is by boots on the ground. Why would that be a red line for you as a combat veteran in Iraq? Why, from your own experience, I mean, would it be catastrophic?
I think so. When you start putting boots in the ground, somebody's going to get hurt, and it's never good to lose our own men and women in uniform, and for them to be in this conflict over trying to grab some uranium. I don't know. I just pray that the higher ups have a better understanding of this than I do.
And it's very easy, Justin, for people like me and the men in dark suits who sit around posh tables talking about wars and what they're going to do, yeah, maybe even boots on the ground. It's very easy for them to make decisions because it's not them going into battle. How does it make you feel when you hear people say, "Oh, just send boots on the ground and send in the military, send the soldiers in"? So flagrantly.
They don't understand how military works. They just think about the infantry. They just think about the guys who are doing the fighting. But anytime you send an infantry unit in, you have support units. You have truck drivers. You have fuelers. You have aircraft. You have medics. You have MP. I mean, when you send in one battalion or one brigade of U.S. Army, you're going to have another battalion of other assets. You have warehouse. I mean, like, the list goes on and on and on. So you can't just send in boots on the ground with regular Army. Special operations, they operate a little differently, so they're able to maneuver quickly and don't have that much support. But if we sent regular Army, you're going to see a lot more than what you think.
Can I ask you about the UK-US relationship? Because, of course, you would have served alongside maybe British soldiers in Iraq.
Yes.
How was that? Just tell us about that, first of all.
I always enjoyed serving with other nations. I think just about every single one of them I really enjoyed. We had a good working relationship. We had a lot of fun. As military, always love dark humor, so we pick on each other. But I've always considered the UK my cousins. I mean, you guys I just love you guys.
Yeah, same to you, definitely, and thank you for your service. But I just wonder now, with the Iran situation and these sort of quite vocal back and forth between President Trump and Keir Starmer and our government's reluctance to get involved and help America, has that changed anything?
No, because like you described before, it's the dark suits sitting at the posh tables. The British people are wonderful people. They're loving, and the leadership right now is going through an upheaval in the UK with the elections, and I think that maybe they're being a little distracted by what's going on. I mean, stateside,
yeah,
countryside.
So you think it's important to make that distinction between the governments of our nations and, for example, the people you served with, the Brits you served with, and maybe even culturally, the normal people, the Americans, the Brits, we're not defined by our leaders of the day?
No, not at all. We can only trust our leaders so far. I'd love to be able to trust them a lot more, but you find that the sentiment with the people is more personal, whereas leaders, it's like playing chess. They have to figure out maneuvering units like pieces on a chessboard or checkers. Hopefully they're playing chess and not checkers.
There is a massive build-up, there's an air build-up particularly of many aircraft, tankers and so on in the Middle East, American personnel. Do you think we're going to see an escalation of violence in Iran if a deal doesn't come to fruition? I mean, Trump has been threatening it for months now, but...
I would almost guarantee it. Yeah, anytime you have a leader coming out like that, Trump or anybody else, there's going to be an escalation. It's heightened emotions in this kind of situation.
This might seem like a weird question as well, but it comes from a non-military person as myself, not very experienced, pretty ignorant, I guess, to what you know militarily. Do you think the American personnel in the Middle East now, building up at bases all across the Middle East on aircraft carriers and so on, do you think they want to get involved in a conflict? Does it make their kind of, again, this is going to sound very flippant, but does it make life more exciting that they can get into action?
Some, yeah. Just like any other job, you have people that really love what they do, and you have some people that don't particularly enjoy being in the military. They're maybe in just for the VA benefits, the GI Bill to go to school. But it's a job. As you complete your basic training and you get out of your job school, it's a job. You wake up, you may work more than 9 to 5, but again, you do what you're told. You complete the mission, and hopefully everybody comes home safe.
And again, it's easy for people like me to talk, but we kind of forget about the human aspect of this. Tens of thousands of military personnel, American personnel in the Middle East. The USS Gerald R. Ford has just returned to the US after, I think it was a record deployment, 326 days at sea, 11 months. And you can imagine what's going on during that time. People missing births, missing funerals, weddings, massive life moments. That was an epic deployment, wasn't it? 326 days away.
Yeah, my second deployment was just about a year. I actually missed the birth of 2 of my children. I have 3 children. I missed 2.
You beat me. I had 1. I missed 1.
And again, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, you're missing birthdays. You're missing. This is, that kind of deployment. That's Christmas, that's Mother's Day, that's Father's Day, that's 4th of July, that's a rededication ceremony, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You miss a lot of things. So yeah, you're affecting everybody's life who's on that carrier or in that unit.
Whilst you're here, I'm going to pick your brains on something we're going to be seeing in the next couple of months. So the British Armed Forces will visit the US to mark 250 years of your great nation of American independence with a series of high-profile celebrations planned for this summer. Our world-famous Red Arrows, which is the equivalent to your Blue Angels, they'll lead the UK's contribution with a showcase tour spanning a month. They'll be performing, I think, over DC, New Orleans as well. Royal Navy ships will visit New Orleans later the month before embarking to ports in New York and New Jersey in July. I have to ask you, Special Forces, who's the better Special Forces, SAS or US Special Forces, SEAL Team?
Oh, that's a tough one. Everybody's got a different job, but I'm U.S. Army. I got to go with our Special Forces, U.S. Army Special Forces Tier 1 operators. You would call Delta.
Delta.
Yep. I got to go with the home team.
Yeah, I'll go with the SAS as well. I think we'll agree to disagree on that one. Are you looking forward to 250 celebrations, the military sort of prowess we're going to see from not just the Americans, the Brits as well?
Oh yeah, I absolutely love seeing displays like that. It creates a spirit de corps. We come together and we have some fun, and it's fun for everybody, and it's just a good time.
And your equivalent of the Red Arrows is the Blue Angels. Just tell us about them.
Yeah, so Blue Angels fly F-18s. They're in the Navy, and these guys are probably the best precision pilots on the planet. No offense, but they will actually practice outside of their aircraft. Their flying is so precise that everything is timed. They have to react faster than the information transmits between your eye and your brain.
I saw a video clip actually of the Blue Angels around a table, like a dinner table, eyes closed, mimicking holding what do they call them, throttles? Yeah, well, it's got a joystick.
Joystick and throttle.
Yeah. The timing was impeccable. All their eyes were closed. All performing the same maneuver at the same millisecond, and that's the kind of precision you need to perform these kind of stunts.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you see at the Idaho Air Show earlier today, the 2 jets that collided?
I did see that. Yeah.
Is that a rarity in the US?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Flying's still the safest way to travel.
Yeah, indeed. Luckily, they're okay as well. They all ejected safely. Thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for your service and serving alongside our British heroes as well. Much appreciated. And the 250 celebrations should be epic as well.
Oh, so beautiful.
Looking forward to it. Right, still ahead tonight on The Late Show Live.
Cuba's got problems. We'll finish one first. I like to finish a job.
I really don't understand this. I think Cuba have a death wish. They've acquired more than 300 military drones, right? And are discussing plans to use them to attack the US. That's according to a new report. I'll speak to an expert and a Cuban on that in just a sec. First though, let's get your weather. Back in a sec.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The unsettled theme does continue. A day of sunny spells, scattered showers, rain arriving later, and the winds will be picking up too. Through this morning, though, it's been a bright and fresh start across Scotland and eastern England. Showery outbreaks of rain breaking up across the country, leaving more widespread showers, especially across northern parts of England into Scotland. Northern Ireland turning drier this afternoon with more hazy sunshine developing, and here temperatures reaching up to 14 degrees across the southeast, highs of 14 to 16 degrees. As we go through the afternoon and into the evening time, those showers persisting across much of Scotland. Either side, across the far east and the far west, we should see some sunshine to end the day. Across Northern Ireland, though, we've got the next weather system approaching, so cloud will be increasing, some showery outbreaks of rain arriving by the end of the evening across the south, that persisting across Wales and the southwest of England. So outbreaks of rain during rush hour here, elsewhere holding on to showers. Those showers across eastern areas will start fading away, and it will be replaced by wet and windy conditions. Outbreaks of rain more persistent and heavy than recent days, really holding on and pushing across the country through the overnight period, turning heavy over the hills. But with the rain, cloud and strong southwesterly winds, temperatures will be holding up as we start Tuesday morning. But it's a wet start to Tuesday morning. Outbreaks of rain pushing its way north and eastwards, eventually clearing most places, but lingering the longest across Scotland through much of the day. Behind that, sunny spells, blustery showers moving through. Those showers could be on the heavy side still, but pushing through pretty quickly, and temperatures lifting up to 17 to 19 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Right, let me get your thoughts on this, viewers and listeners. Parents and guardians could be more likely to face harsh repercussions if their children break the law. That's under a shake-up of the youth justice system being spearheaded by our very dear Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. Lammy says he's hoping to prevent children from starting a life of crime with a series of reforms in the new Youth Justice White Paper published on Monday. And as part of the plans, parents and carers could face greater responsibility for their children who commit crimes and cause antisocial behaviour. Ministers plan to strengthen parenting orders, which currently mean parents can be compelled to address their children's behaviour through counselling and guidance, or can lead to fines. Paul Cox, what's your take on this? Are the parents to blame for feral kids?
Well, much like previous discussions we've had tonight, there is a spectrum, isn't there? And feral kids sometimes can be very mischievous, and the parents could do a lot more, but whether they should be punished is another question. However, there is a serious end to this spectrum, and if we take Ruda Axel Kobana into consideration here, and how neglectful his parents, particularly his father, was in preventing one of our most heinous atrocities, unfortunately, in which Keir Starmer reacted by calling everybody who disliked it far right extraordinarily, then yes, there is a case to answer, because his parents in that case very much could have done things to prevent what happened there, and therefore there will be parents around the country right now who have grave concerns about their children, the way they're behaving and what they're up to, and probably could step in to do something. And when that's the case, we should be holding them responsible for that, because they are children. They are in the custody of those parents. Now, at the other end of things, as I was saying at the beginning, you know, if it's truanting, shoplifting or whatever, then, you know, we should give the parents an opportunity, because, you know, even the best parents, even the best families can have unruly children, Ben.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I mean, I don't know, it's hard. In America, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, there was mass shooting cases, I think, where, at least in one case, parents were also punished through the courts for the mass shootings their children were responsible for. I don't know, it's a sticky, it's a really hard conversation, isn't it? I don't think there's a blanket decision to be made here, Mark.
Yeah, so you're referring to a high school shooting in Georgia, and in that case, there was a 14-year-old student who killed 2 students, and then the father was accused of knowingly allowing his son to possess that weapon, and the jury then found him guilty of the charges the kid. And this, what you've just mentioned about these possibly charging the parents, that's an issue here in Washington, D.C., in the capital of the United States.
In my neighborhood.
In your neighborhood, but also in other neighborhoods as well, and they're called teen takeovers. And if you've seen the social media video, it's a little bit infuriating because all of these teens, hundreds of which are either starting fights or they are blocking traffic, etc. And just a couple of days ago, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, she announced that for the first time, the U.S. Attorney's Office will go and charge parents of these minors. And so this would be up to 6 months in jail for these parents, and they'll be charging delinquency, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And she says, quote, "This sends a clear message to the parents that you must supervise your kids or face criminal consequences."
See, on the surface, Victoria, I agree with that. However, we just saw off air, I showed you this clip doing the rounds now, fresh out the kitchen from my neighbourhood here in DC, of a bunch of kids in a Chipotle, which is a kind of semi-fast food restaurant, Mexican place, lobbing chairs at each other, scrapping, fighting, really violent scenes. But these are maybe 15, 16, 17-year-old children. How are parents meant to stop 17-year-olds leaving the house, going out and causing trouble? I mean, you can't physically stop them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good question, Ben, and, you know, I think with the best intentions of parents, sometimes kids want to rebel against how they're raised, I think is also an important point here. Like, I remember, for example, being back in college where, you know, kids were sent to highbrow private high schools, Catholic schools namely, where, you know, those parents are paying sometimes $40,000, $50,000 a year in tuition before these kids even got to college, which, you know, to the parents, they probably thought they were doing everything right sending these kids to prestigious schools. And then as soon as these kids got some semblance of freedom when they came to college, they were, you know, going out partying, doing all kinds of things that they weren't supposed to be doing. And so I think it's a fine line there. But I think also when you look at things that have happened here in DC, I think it brings up the question of should sometimes these juveniles be charged as adults, particularly if they're, you know, committing murder, for example, right? We always go back to the case of the Uber driver here in DC who, you know, was unfortunately killed after some rash actions of a couple of teenage girls. And so I think maybe that's something that people should look at is, you know, if you have a crime as serious as murder or grievous bodily harm where you're completely impacting the life of the person that is the victim, then maybe the judicial system should actually look at not charging as juvenile.
And the case we just talked about the man going to court because of his son killing people, that was the second time that a parent of a school shooter here in the U.S. just in the last 2 years has faced this kind of charge, and it probably won't be the last is what we're seeing. Yeah,
maybe we should be leaving the door open, Paul. Indeed, in the case of Axel Rudabakana's parents, who the inquiry found that I mean, they'd known for a long time that something wasn't right with him, that he had a collection of knives. I mean, surely in that case something needs to be looked at, as one example.
Well, it was proven throughout that case. He was referred to prevent on 4 or 5 occasions. You know, we all know some unruly children. We don't know any that have been referred to prevent. So if your child has been referred to prevent that many times, and you're aware he's got ricin in his room, he's learning how to make explosives in his room.
I've forgotten about that.
Also that he's, you know, he's very much leaning into the sadistic side of the Islamic faith, and he pretty much, by all accounts, absolutely hated the British people as a result, especially white British people. Let's not forget that. So, look, if you're aware that's going on, and you cannot be not aware, particularly when schools and police officers are at your door, then you have a responsibility, should I say. Look, of course, with all these incidences, and it's very easy for me to sit here and quarterback this sometime after the event, there is nuance to a lot of these cases, and with these shooters in particular, and the girls with the Uber driver in America. I mean, how could the parents be held culpable for something that was very much in the moment, very rash, very stupid. You know, we're all humans at the end of the day. So leaving the door open is the right thing, Ben, and I think you have to remember there's obviously nuance to a lot of these things.
Yeah, lots of interesting comments from viewers. Nikki said, I think there are two types of parents, the ones who need help and the ones who need to be held accountable. But how would you know the difference and who decides? Pseudo Massa said, a clip around the ear comes to mind. Jackie, hello Jackie, you said, any reasonable, responsible parent will say yes. Parents should be responsible for your children. It starts from day one and continues all through their life. I'm inclined to agree with that as a father of two kids. I think at some point, if you have, again, maybe I'm going to be very controversial here. If your child is a scally as a teenager, I'd suggest you haven't really done as much as you could as a when they were kids. You as a parent haven't really done your job. But again, I know there's different circumstances. Michael said, my two kids, we never had one bit of trouble from them when they were growing up. They were brought up to respect their elders. I was proud how they turned out pillars of society. Yeah, well done, Michael. And yeah, is that it? Pseudo Mass, I think if your child is going to go on a mass shooting spree, it's probably in some way your fault. I mean, yeah, Mark, can you lay... Again, it must all come down to each individual case.
In some ways, this is really the frontier of the legal system here in the U.S. This is what the test is all about. We've now seen 2 cases of parents charged when their children had gone on and killed somebody. We're now seeing in D.C. for the first time the U.S. Attorney's Office says they will be charging adults when their children act out in these teen takeovers. This is kind of a frontier space in the legal system, and we'll have to see if that starts spreading to other states here in the U.S. as well.
Okay, Paul, very quickly, I know not everybody's keen on football. There's 2 stories on the front pages. One, let's do the Daily Star very quickly. The headline reads, it's Andy Burnham, not about the leadership, not about Brexit, but the headline reads, Burnham, I'd get rid of VAR. So Andy Burnham, he's an Everton fan, says he'll get rid of VAR. And Warwick Hunt, formerly Coq d'Or on Your Say, maybe you're familiar with him, has said, Arsenal, uppity aggressive, small man syndrome, boring five-a-side as 10 outfield players, Spanish approach to football, blah, 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 play up Paul, up the Spurs. Would you get rid of VAR, Paul, as Andy Burnham wants?
Oh, do you know what? I think I probably would. I gave it a fair crack. I'm a Portsmouth fan, so for those who are unaware, if you're in America particularly, if you're outside of the Premiership and Portsmouth are 1 league below the Premiership, you are not subjected to VAR. VAR requires quite a lot of technology in the stadium in order for it to be used, and it's only used within the Premiership, and it's only used for international games. Look, there will be mistakes without it. Undoubtedly, but I think that's part of life's excitement, Ben, and I would get rid of it as well.
Who? I would as well. I hate it. Who's Burnham appealing to by coming out with this? Is this just some sort of innocent, off-the-cuff comment, or is he trying to target working-class football voters?
Look, maybe. But that would be very typical of someone pretending to be working class. Oh, they like football, don't they? Let's talk about VAR. Look, Andy Burnham to me is a pseudo-working class person. We've seen his accent change over the years. He's become more and more Mancunian, and it's got to bounce back. He used to wear Armani suits all the time when he was placed as an MP in London. Andy Burnham is no man of the working class. I'm sure there are people in Manchester that would vouch for him and say that he's done a lot for them. I believe their local public transport system has become very cheaper because of him. But do you know what? Targeting VAR, if that's a political message, then it's not going to get him anywhere. How's that going to cut through the absolute disastrous soup that this Labour Party has created in the last 18 months? It's just simply not. You know, it's just never going to happen.
It's a shame we don't have VAR for the government. When they make a decision, we say, hang on a minute, can we have a quick review on this, please?
Yeah.
Smashing the gangs. You said you smashed the gangs. Let's have a quick replay. You've not smashed any gangs. Red card. Out you go, Starmer. Mark, you wanted to say something?
I'll see your VAR and I'll raise you ABS.
ABS?
Major League Baseball here in the U.S. has the automated strike system, where now this is the first season and they're using this automated system. If the pitcher or the catcher or the batter wants to challenge it, they go to this computer to overrule the ump or to say, hey, look, that was the right call.
Do they get a certain amount of challenges per match before they... How many? What, 3?
Exactly. I think it's 2. And then if you win, you get them back as well. And this has sort of really brought a jolt along with other changes Major League Baseball has made back to the sport. It has certainly provided almost a weird crowd rooting against the umpires at some point, because when there's a challenge, you're waiting for the computer on the screen to come up. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? And then they can boo the umps or not. So it's definitely a change, but it's brought some new life into the game.
Well, that's a favourite British pastime in the UK, hollering referees and abusing refs. I'm only joking. Refs do a great job. Stop abusing them. Paul, let's look at the front page of The Sun. Same sort of theme, I guess. World Cup exclusive. The FA, the Football Association in the UK, in England, is sending soft mattress toppers to the United States, this side of the pond, for quote-unquote pampered Three Lions aces. England stars will be taking their own bedding to the US, courtesy of the FA. Are they pampered, or is it important that our England stars are best equipped to try and win this World Cup?
And you and I both know that if a mattress topper means that they win the World Cup, we'll take that as a very sensible decision all day long. Look, these guys are paid exorbitant amount of money, okay? But they're like precious vases. We're asking them to go and do something abroad. We're trying to move them around. Of course they should be comfortable. You know, we've moved on from the dark ages. A mattress topper's hardly expensive, is it? You can pick one up in Argos. So it's not a big deal, I don't think, Ben. But I think they should be looked after, and anything that helps England win the World Cup. In actual fact, what they should do is concentrate completely on the ticket prices, which are absolutely scandalous in the US, as we previously discussed,
lots
Ben.
of tickets on general sale now in the US, even England's potential quarter-final on general sale, because they're just so expensive. Really unbelievable for a World Cup that you've got quarter-final matches on general sale. OK, thank you, Paul. I was going to say something. Oh, yeah, that was it. Declan Rice, he could finish this summer as a Premier League winner, Champions League winner and a World Cup winner. Go on, Declan. Good luck to you. Right, let's move on to more serious matters. American intelligence has reportedly claimed that Cuba has acquired more than 300 drones and plans to strike US military bases. I keep saying they must have a death wish. A leaked report to news website Axios suggests the CIA believe a Cuban attack on Guantanamo Bay is being discussed. It comes after CIA Director John Ratcliffe travelled to the nation on Thursday and warned officials against engaging in hostilities. Here was President Trump earlier in the month talking about Cuba.
Is Cuba going to turn to us and make a deal?
I think so. I mean, look, I've been hearing about Cuba since I'm a little boy. They've been saying, what's going on with Cuba? And I think we'll be turning it. Marco's been very effective.
And they're taking the aid now.
Yeah, they're taking the aid. They want aid. They need help.
OK, I'm joined now by the Heritage Foundation's Senior Policy Analyst for Latin America, Andres Martinez Fernandez. Andres, great to see you again. Again, the only way I can describe this is, do they have a death wish? Are the Cubans really seriously considering drone strikes on Guantanamo Bay?
Oh, I'm certain about it. You know, this is a regime, you talk about a death wish. Remember, this is the same regime that a few decades back hosted willingly nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union. It's the same government. Raul Castro was there, and he's still the power behind the scenes in Cuba and the communist dictatorship, even at its advanced age. And he's also the person who ordered the shooting down of civilian rescue flights, killing several Americans, which the United States now is preparing to indict him for, reportedly. So I absolutely believe that this regime believes that it can withstand the strength of the United States, and it's been that kind of false bravado and thinking has been, I would say, bolstered by decades of U.S. leadership that has really not looked the other way. It's looked the other way as Cuba has increasingly attacked the United States with these spying activities, malign activities, the hosting of Chinese strategic intelligence bases and otherwise. It's a regime that it hasn't had a wake-up call, and I'm increasingly thinking that that's going to be what's going to be necessary for the change in Cuba that we really need to see. They just don't see what time it is.
President Trump is quoted as saying he can do anything he wants with Cuba. What do you think he will do? Sort of a Venezuela, Maduro-style, swift intervention? Would it be as easy as Venezuela?
I think it would be certainly on the table. You know, when you talk about what a military conflict could look like with Cuba, it's important to note we also already saw very recently a substantial clash between U.S. military forces and Cuban forces, and that was in Venezuela. It was the Cubans, dozens of Cubans that were protecting Maduro that we confronted and killed when U.S. Special Forces went into Cuba, and they dispatched with them very effectively. The Cuban regime, the Cuban military, it's sclerotic. It's been basically depending on increasingly decayed Soviet-era technology. It again puts on this false bravado of being a very powerful military state. But at the end of the day, now the Cuban military is really more, over the past several years, been more focused on the tourism industry and gaining wealth through that for its own elites, while leaving both the people of Cuba and even the Cuban military and security forces at its core operational capacities without any kind of basic resources. And that's the reality that they're facing now, as they have finally have a leader in the United States that they're actually going to be held accountable from. And I think that's very much what we're going to see from President Trump going forward. It could certainly look like a military operation. I think that's something that he is very clear about being on the table. Whether or not the Cuban regime recognizes what it's facing and its own impending threat with, again, what we saw very recently in Venezuela in fresh memory, I think that will be a key factor as far as what we see going forward.
Andres, just finally, tell us about the humanitarian situation in Cuba, with certain UK politicians and people who are absolutely slamming the US for what they say are sort of crimes against humanity, with blockades and so on. The likes of, maybe you don't know him, Jeremy Corbyn, very strange guy. What's going on the ground in Cuba?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's certainly a humanitarian crisis in Cuba, but it didn't start in the past couple of weeks. It's been on the ground, the reality, for decades. And that's, as a result of the Cuban communist dictatorship starving the economy, putting a chokehold around all elements of the private life and civilian economic life in Cuba for the benefit of its own elites. And what we've seen is in the past, how Venezuela and others have kind of subsidized that, but the Venezuelan regime, such as it existed, is no longer offering that cost-free lifeline to Cuba, and that's the reality of what they're facing. It's not because of the United States taking this harsh restrictions on them. They just can't afford to import things because it's a regime that has relied on a communist system, which has time and time again proven to lead to this kind of disaster and humanitarian crisis.
Okay, we'll wait with bated breath. We'll see what happens with regards to Cuba. President Trump, we know he's not shy of a conflict, so yeah, watch this space. Andres, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always. I'm joined now by Cuban commentator Gabriela Blanco. Gabriela, good evening. Thank you for joining the Late Show Live. You, Gabriela, you grew up under this communist regime in Cuba. Well, maybe just to explain, what was life like for you growing up in Cuba under these people?
Thank you. Life in Cuba was basically about never having freedom or anything. So you were not in charge of the career you're going to study, the food you're going to purchase at the supermarket, where you're going to live. We have restrictions even regarding which province or which state you're going to move to or walk in on the streets. So really being born in Cuba is about when can I get out? Cubans have never had an option of voting their way out of the situation that we're in. And so we're very much excited seeing what's happening with our country now, and we're very hopeful for a real change.
So yes, I was going to ask you, we saw with the Venezuelans after Maduro was captured and taken away, thousands of Venezuelans on the streets celebrating, really joyous scenes. Do the Cuban people They want this, do they? They want similar to what we saw in Venezuela. They would support US military intervention.
100% Cubans want a change. I think our celebration is going to be larger just because it's been almost 7 decades of our current situation. So yes, we are all very much, you won't see it on the streets yet because obviously the fear is real and the consequences can be real for anyone that speaks up against this regime. But Cuba is absolutely waiting for a new dawn and a new era and a new economic system in which we can travel freely, invest, trade, do all of the things that we've been forbidden from doing for so long. Because it's not the US government that's keeping us as Cuban citizens from traveling or investing in our country, from fishing in our oceans or working selling our crops, working our lands. It is exclusively the Cuban regime doing that. So absolutely there will be a celebration in Cuba and the US and the world.
Gabriela, you are a Cuban dissident. What is the consequences you speak of for dissidents? What happens to them?
Well, if you're in Cuba, you will go to jail, up to 8 years in prison for a Facebook post, a sign. You'll stay even longer. We have no fair trials. And if you're abroad, then your family can face the consequences. They can face the same consequences. They can lose their job. They can go to jail. They won't be allowed to go to university. This has been the case for ages. And that's why for the longest time, you haven't really seen an organized opposition in the way that you're seeing it now when it comes to Cuba, because they have our families hostages. We are kidnapped pretty much. And we are very blessed that we get to see a day where now people are speaking up and we are more organized and we are ready, working on a plan for a transition to democracy. And hopefully we will be backed by the current administration. We're very hopeful, seeing the way Marco Rubio and President Trump have been handling the Cuba situation. And we do believe there's going to be real change coming soon.
Wow, Gabriela, thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it. And I hope you and the Cuban people get what they want and, yeah, get the commies out. I mean, give me an example of where communism has ever been a success. I won't hold my breath. Gabriela Blanco, thank you so much. Appreciate it. gbnews.com/your say. Let me know your thoughts. Somebody has said, Pseudo-Mass has said, basically Cuba have had the equivalent to the Green Party in power. There we go. And also, Gabriela there talking about how people in Cuba are banged up for Facebook posts. The first thing that came to my mind was, oh, that sounds pretty familiar. So, yeah, commie's going to commie, eh? Let's move on. The Telegraph is reporting children are being taught that black people cannot be racist towards white people as part of an education initiative aimed at countering racism. Teenage pupils are being told that black people can be racially prejudiced towards white people, but that it's not racism because that can only be exhibited by those who hold cultural power, such as white people over black people. Sounds like a load of word salad, to be honest. Children as young as 7 are also being taught that white people are likely to be privileged because of their skin colour, and then they're advised that they have a responsibility, quote unquote, to reduce racism by being aware of their white privilege, improving their language and behaviour, and challenging their friends' actions. The anti-racism lessons have been devised by a group of schools in Sheffield to empower students and teachers to explore ways in which learning about race and racism can challenge the unequal systems that surround us in society. It goes on. I'm not reading all this. Paul Cox, can black people be racist towards white people?
And it happens all the time. There's millions of examples of it, day in, day out. I mean, it's actually pretty, I don't know, sub-intelligent to suggest otherwise. You can't just change words. We often see this, particularly from the progressive left, where reality doesn't make sense to them or they want to change it in some way, so they lie about it and change the words associated with it. I mean, it's very Orwellian, it's very Aldous Huxley. Look, of course they can, and the idea that we're teaching children this and giving, by the way, and no right-minded black person is asking for this, giving black people an absolute pass when it comes to racism, what a ridiculous thing to do. Why not give brown people a pass on shoplifting? If you're brown, you can shoplift. There you go, it's about as sensible as that.
Well, Well, their point, Paul, is that because, well, again, this is their point, they say that there is white privilege, that institutions and society is dominated by whites generally, so somehow they've squared it off as saying, well, it's not racism. Yes, it's prejudice, but it's not racism. I don't know what the difference is.
So, unfortunately, Ben, I don't know if you can hear me, but my battery, I think, on my ear pack has gone. Yeah, Smashing, I can't hear anything you're saying. But what I will say is, even though I don't know what you said, there is, I guess, cultural, historical reasons why some black people would think it was acceptable for this to be the case. I don't agree with it. You don't take two wrongs to make a right, Ben, and hopefully that is in line with something you said.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Victoria, I mean, I don't know. I don't know why they're teaching this to children, but I mean, maybe it's a genuine debate, a conversation. Can black people be racist towards whites?
I think excluding any group on the basis of anything, including race, is wrong. But, you know, I go back to the time when I was in college and we had, you know, I was in Student Senate, and we had African-American students that wanted to create their own black student government, which to me seems exclusionary, right? Why would you go from a time in the US where we had the idea of separate but equal, we went away from that, and then we had black students on my campus that were trying to go back to that idea that we, you know, abolished and got rid of decades ago here in the US. And, you know, really to me it seems like people that try to exclude groups on the basis of race are really just going backwards in history at a time where, you know, particularly right here in America, America 250, we're supposed to be celebrating the things that unite us, right? As you were talking about earlier in the show, you know, Brits were asked what unites us. I think in America that answer is, you know, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. These are the things that this nation was founded on, and then, you know, in the very early years, these were common ideas that people agreed on. And, you know, I think it's, when you talk about diversity, particularly diversity of thought, it's our Constitution that enables us to participate in this free exchange of ideas to make sure that, you know, we can talk about our differences in a more or less civil way.
Yeah, and also, I mean, maybe I'll never understand, Mark, because I'm not black, and my ancestry, maybe I just don't have that cultural experience of being persecuted and prejudiced against. I don't know, maybe I'm just ignorant, but wasn't it Martin Luther King who said, "Judge me on the content of my character, not the colour of my skin"? So how does that then work if blacks can be prejudicial towards whites, but that's not racism?
I would love to have a social scientist up here right now. Can we book one in the next 30 seconds? I'll have to look more into this. I was always taught that racism is a scourge, it's bad. No matter who you are, where you come from, what your culture is, what your color is, you are not racist to another person. That's not what you should be. And so I would love to know more about this and the study, and I would love to talk to a social scientist about it.
Do you think they should be teaching this in schools to kids?
No, again, I think this is going backwards in our society.
7-year-olds. By the way,
Right.
7-year-olds. Sorry to interject. This winds me up. Leave 7-year-old children alone. Stop teaching them about not just LGBT relationships. Stop teaching them about sex, heterosexual relationships. Kids of 7 don't need to know about racism, slavery, prejudice, sex, relationships. Just leave them alone to be kids. They're 7. My son is 6. I could not imagine sitting down with my son, my sweet boy Jude, and talking to him about race. He doesn't see people of colour. He looks at people, whether they're fun to play with or not, or whether they're interesting. He doesn't see a black person. He doesn't see a white person. He doesn't see a gay person. It's just not in their sphere. I wish adults with baggage would just leave kids alone and stop corrupting them. It really winds me up.
Yeah, I mean, I think here in the U.S. what we've seen is these self-fulfilling prophecies, which I think are now kind of going the other way. But I think particularly over the last 15 years to a decade, as you've seen, you know, people that have gotten master's degrees and PhDs in this social justice space, and then the only thing that they can do is a lot of times get jobs either in universities or the K-12 system, where they are regurgitating these things that they learned at elite institutions, paid, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars for these degrees. And so for them, the only payoff is to go and really indoctrinate the youth with these radical ideas where, you know, they should be learning reading, writing, math, and basic how to function in society.
I really think it's evil, Mark. Just indoctrinating kids with whatever, any political nonsense. Would you think I'm a bit mad?
I think I was in, I'm trying to recall here, we do grading systems differently. I was in 8th grade when we had sex education. So I would have been...
How old's that?
12? I think 12. 11 or 12. When I think 12.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it depends what kind of that entails as well. I mean, there are some instances in the UK where they teach kids maybe of that age about all sorts of, I mean, you know, wide of the mark sex ed. That's all I'll say. You know, not just about the birds and the bees, but different. You just don't need to ply children's brain, 7-year-olds I'm talking about, with stuff like that. I find it really evil.
That's the first time that I knew what the term gay or lesbian, or we had the whole sex education and the birds and the bees, right, and how you make a baby and all that. I think I was 11 or 12.
I think 12's okay.
Yeah,
12's all right. But Paul Cox, can you hear me? Or do you have the misfortune of being able to hear me again?
No, that's
7-year-olds
always a pleasure.
is a different prospect, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. Mark's right in the sense that teenagers, when your bodies are changing and you're starting to feel things differently through hormones, is a time to start talking about it and perhaps help children make sense of the world. Look, I'm a 46-year-old man with a 16-year-old daughter. I still don't fully understand how children are made, Ben. So there are things I need to learn. And I plan, you know, to educate myself. I'm going to do it as soon as I leave here. I'll go and ask a grown-up, I'm sure. But look, absolutely not. Evil's the right word, by the way, Ben. I know it's a word that we bandy around, but what all these things are doing is saying there's ills in society which we don't like, and what we're going to do is teach our children the things we want them to know in order to shape their future. And it's exactly the same as Hitler Youth, Ben. That was evil. This is evil. We cannot keep involving children in, as adults, what our latest whim is, because that's exactly what it is. Just because you are trying to get a promotion at work, just because you're trying to get elected to Parliament, stop creating policy that also involves children in your madness. We don't care for it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I just think, well, I don't think, I know, children are I've said before, the purest manifestation of God, of divinity. Whatever your thought of God is, your image of God, is it a bearded guy in the sky, is it some supernatural energy, whatever. They are innocent beyond belief. They are pure, uncorrupted, until they get into the hands of damaged adults. And we're all damaged as adults. It's just sort of par for the course of humanity. We're all damaged human beings. But just leave children to enjoy their precious flicking time, their flashing time as innocent kids who, you know, their only concern is what snack they're going to have or who they're going to play with that day, whether they'll go on the slide or the swing. Leave them alone, you bunch of weirdos. And that goes towards teaching them about 7-year-olds, heterosexual relationships, gay relationships, slavery, racism. Leave them alone, you absolute weirdos. Anyway, that's said. Right, should we move on, Paul? Anything that's in your tickled your fancy on the front pages? One more. What about looking at front page of the Times as a last story?
Yeah, let's go.
Chancellor puts the brakes on 5p fuel duty rise. This comes off the back of reports in the US, actually, that President Trump, off the back of the Iran war, the Strait of Hormuz fiasco, is considering, Mark, maybe you can update us on this, is he going ahead with his pledge to scrap tax on gas?
So this would require congressional approval, and as I think you and I talked about a couple weeks ago, the federal gas tax is essentially between 18 and 24 cents per gallon here, and since gasoline is up about 44% in the past year, that would only save the average consumer about 4% on the cost of gas. Even some Republicans in Congress are saying, wait a minute, why are we going to repeal this tax and add essentially to the deficit less money we're bringing in? So I think that the president has proposed it. Both the House Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader in Congress have said, let's look at it. Not sure the votes are there.
Paul Cox, the Chancellor's putting the brakes, says the Times, on the 5p fuel duty rise. That will go some way towards lightening the load on motorists?
They don't need to, do they? Because the price at the fuel pumps are so high now, they're taking 50% tax on that price. They've already got their increase. Oh, we don't like to charge the people too much. They've already got the money. They don't need to add 5p on. Of course they don't need to put it on. It's £1.90 minimum to fill per litre to put diesel into my car. It's already exorbitant. They don't need to put the money on. They're getting it anyway, Ben.
I'm just trying to work out, I'm going to ask AI what the equivalent in the US would be. What is it, 170 a litre, did you say?
It's, so so petrol's about £1.60 a litre, and diesel is about £1.90. It can be higher. Litres is probably 2 pints, I don't know, which would be a quarter of a gallon.
Not even close, yeah.
I'm just asking AI. Answer on the postcard. Victoria, do you know off the top of your head?
Like $8 a gallon?
$8 a gallon?
Yeah, it's not close here in the US. It's vastly different.
Yeah, it would be $8.56 a gallon. What would the American people do, Victoria, if you had $8 a gallon gas?
Well, I think they're getting pretty close in California, unfortunately. I watched the California gubernatorial debate, I guess it was almost 2 weeks ago now, and they were talking about how, it's all because of Trump, the gas prices are up, which, I've said on this very show, this is a reality that a lot of people are facing. But then they go, in Southern California, you just look across the state border where $2 to $3 less is the price in Arizona. So then that kind of goes and compounds where, Newsom is saying, oh, it's all Trump's fault, but then you really look at these crazy policies.
So what's the price in Cali at the moment?
I think it's $6 or $6.50.
So Gas Buddy, which we quote here all the time in the U.S., Gas Buddy says the average in California right now $6.11 per gallon.
Oh, so not as high as the UK still. Would you have some sort of French-style revolution if you had $8 gas?
Well, that's about what, 20. Help me with math. I didn't take math as a journalist. 25%, I think, less than the cost in the UK. In California, and that's the highest in the country. I'm not sure about Alaska.
Yeah. Paul, would you, it just goes to show the difference that if you drill, baby, drill, you become energy efficient, you start taking responsibility for your energy future, good things can happen.
Yeah, look, the greatest example of the biggest expansion in an economy, i.e. a successful economy, is the British Industrial Revolution of the late Victorian period. And one of the reasons they were able to do it was relatively cheap labour, which helps, but sovereign and cheap fuel. You cannot fuel a successful economy without a fuel supply, and it needs to be cheap. Okay. It costs, I don't know what size my tank is in gallons, but it costs £120 to fill my car up.
Right.
And I need to do that once a week because I do 40,000 miles a year.
We've run out of gas. Unfortunately, on the show tonight. Thank you for being with us, Paul Cox. Love you. Take care of yourself. Mark, thank you very much. And Victoria as well. And indeed, the biggest thank you of all to you, loyal viewers, staying up so long to spend tonight with me. I'll see you next week. Bev is with you tomorrow from midnight. Have a great week. Sweet dreams and good night. Goodbye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The unsettled theme does continue. A day of sunny spells, scattered showers, rain arriving later, and the winds will be picking up too. Through this morning, though, it's been a bright and fresh start across Scotland and eastern England. Showery outbreaks of rain breaking up across the country, leaving more widespread showers, especially across northern parts of England into Scotland. Northern Ireland turning drier this afternoon with more hazy sunshine developing, and here temperatures reaching up to 14 degrees across the southeast, highs of 14 to 16 degrees. As we go through the afternoon and into the evening time, those showers persisting across much of Scotland. Either side, across the far east and the far west, we should see some sunshine to end the day. Across Northern Ireland, though, we've got the next weather system approaching, so cloud will be increasing, some showery outbreaks of rain arriving by the end of the evening across the south, that persisting across Wales and the southwest of England. So outbreaks of rain during rush hour here, elsewhere holding on to showers. Those showers across eastern areas will start fading away and it will be replaced by wet and windy conditions. Outbreaks of rain more persistent and heavy than recent days, really holding on and pushing across the country through the overnight period, turning heavy over the hills. But with the rain, cloud and strong southwesterly winds temperatures will be holding up as we start Tuesday morning. But it's a wet start to Tuesday morning. Outbreaks of rain pushing its way north and eastwards, eventually clearing most places, but lingering the longest across Scotland through much of the day. Behind that, sunny spells, blustery showers moving through. Those showers could be on the heavy side still, but pushing through pretty quickly, and temperatures lifting up to 17 to 19 degrees.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me. Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promise.